Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar, and we are here today with a triple threat. Great guitar player, amazing writer, and incredible producer. I'm with the one and only John Shanks. John is a 6-time Grammy-nominated songwriter, producer, and guitar player. He's produced and or written 43 number one singles, 86 number one albums, and he's sold over 60 million records to date in the genres of rock, pop, and country music. I want to say those numbers again because, this is almost statistically impossible. He's produced and written, meaning he's been involved in writing or production of 43 number one singles, 86 number one albums, and sold over 60 million records to date. In 2005, I need to process that for a minute. In 2005, he won the Grammy for Producer of the Year. And for people in the industry, his work is considered the gold standard. Clive Davis himself, former president of Columbia Records and the founder of Arista Records, once said, "John's records have become the sound of top 40 radio. He's the father of that guitar-driven kind of pop sound." And we're going to talk today about how he arrives at the sound he puts out. After moving to LA in the early 1980s, a meeting with Melissa Etheridge proved to be a turning point in John's career. After briefly playing guitar in her band, John left to concentrate more on his own writing and production. In the 1990s, John worked with diverse rock, pop, and blues acts like Alanis Morrisette, The Corrs, Bonnie Raitt, Joe Cocker, and others. John and Melissa reunited in the late 90s to co-write and produce her Grammy-nominated 1999 album Breakdown, and he still works with her today, and he's been working with some of the biggest names in music ever since. His success continued into the 2000s, where some of his biggest hits included Keith Urban's Somebody Like You, Miley Cyrus's The Climb, Bon Jovi, Who Says You Can't Go Home, Natasha Bedingfield's Pocket Full of Sunshine, Kelly Clarkson's Breakaway, Ashley Simpson's Pieces of Me, and the Wreckers' Leave the Pieces. He also co-wrote and produced Take That's international hit album Beautiful World, including the number one hit single Patience, which won the Brit Award for Song of the Year in 2007. That's like a landmark song over in the UK. He then re-teamed with Take That the following year to produce Circus, which also became a multi-platinum number one album. John also worked on singles and albums with artists like Chris Isaak, Steven Tyler, Liz Phair, Stevie Nicks, Fleetwood Mac, Celine Dion, Rod Stewart, Santana, Sting, Annie Lennox, Leona Lewis, Robbie Robertson, and others. In February of 2012, he produced Van Halen's comeback album, A Different Kind of Truth. He also recently worked with artists like Kobe Calais, the Goo Goo Dolls, Westlife, Delta Goodrum, Lawson, and he's currently in the studio with Bon Jovi working on their, 6th or 7th album together. A chameleon in the studio that improves and clarifies artists' own voices rather than imposing a signature sound. John's work continues to be diverse, eclectic, and successful. Sheryl Crow once summarized John to Rolling Stone when she said, "John knows how to make stuff sound like it belongs on the radio." Early 2016, John opened a state-of-the-art multi-room recording studio high up the Hollywood Hills. Artists like Sheryl Crow, Keith Urban, Melissa Etheridge, Bon Jovi, Kelly Clarkson, Santana, Michelle Branch, Fleetwood Mac, and numerous others have all recorded there. John's also a massive vintage guitar collector, and I don't know if this is true, but rumor has it he actually has 2 of every guitar in his collection, 1 copy in his East Coast studio and 1 in his West. And is that true, John?
It was suggested, do you want to leave some of this on the East Coast, because for rehearsals and stuff. So a lot of the guitars that I use on the road, I chose to leave back east. So, are there duplicates? Yes, there's certain guitars that I have, I fall in love with a early 60s SG. So I have a 61 SG that I bought years and years ago, and then which I loved, and I've used on a lot of records, and on a 68 custom, Les Paul custom that I love. So I'm always it's kind of a benchmark. So if I find a guitar that's similar to that, and then I ended up finding a 64 SG very George Harrison-y kind of, but it's really the pickups and the feel. So that I actually I have on the road with us because it has it's been refretted and the jack to where you plug in was broken. So it's technically a player, even though it has the magic and I actually bought it over a cleaner guitar because the cleaner guitar wasn't as good. One was, I think at the time I paid like $3,500 for this guitar, the 64, but there was like a $7,500 guitar or $6,000 guitar, but it wasn't as good. So, I'm kind of the that guy that if it has the mojo, it doesn't matter what it is.
Where do you usually buy your guitars?
The guitar community is fascinating because, like the music industry, it's always about relationships. And so I do, I'm friends with Joe Bonamassa, and we always call it, the guitar safari. So certainly now that I'm playing with Bon Jovi, I'm always driving Phil X crazy. I'm like, come on, let's go to, Willie's Guitars or 30th Street Guitars or Rivington or Rudy's or, so it's a fun little adventure on a day off other than, going to a museum or buying some clothes we probably don't, it's a great way to explore a city because usually the guitar stores are kind of in the arts district or funky part towns. And so it gets you out and I love gear. I love sound and pedals and amps and learning about all of that. So you never know. It's for example, I was at where was I at? TJ Crandall's in New York, and I think it's TJ. Sorry, I might have said that wrong. And Crandall's in New York. It's a small boutique guitar store on the Lower East Side, and found like this great. I was trying all their vintage Strats and Tellys and beautiful acoustics, and kind of at the end, I just picked up this Tiesco, Del Rey, just kind of it was like $750, but it had those gold foils in it and it had a Bigsby on it, and it had been refretted and with a new nut. And I'm playing the guitar and it through a Fender Princeton reverb, and it was magic. It didn't matter that it was $700. It was as good as a 50s, whatever, Telly, or it had that vibe. And you think, wow, this is a tool. This is something I'm going to use. And it just, the wood and the pickups had a beautiful chime to it. And it turned out it was John Leventhal's old guitar. Okay. So John Leventhal, people to know, was married to Roseanne Cash. He's produced Sean Colvin, Mark Cohen. He's a fine guitar player and guy I look up to, So oddly enough, he and I bumped into each other pretty recently, and we've become friends. So,
That's weird.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. I was at Chelsea Guitars, and because I was looking at a guitar, and I actually ended up buying a guitar from them, an old Silvertone, because I was kind of watching Mark Knopfler live in Paris, and he was playing this great old Dan Electro, and I ended up finding one, and that happened to be a really good one, and John Leventhal walked in the store. So, you go on these little journeys and quests, and you start meeting fellow musicians and people you admire and respect. And it's just all part of it. It's just, to me, it's all connected.
Very cool. I just read an article. They're closing Chelsea Guitars.
Yeah. But then I heard they might actually get to keep the space. So we'll see about that.
All right. So you grew up in New York City, and then at 17, you moved out to LA. I was curious what prompted that move, and what were you doing in the city at the time you left?
In New York, I was basically going to school and studying music and taking guitar lessons. And I wouldn't say I was in any bands. I'd started doing a couple sessions, started playing on some hip hop stuff and going down to Green Street Studios and playing on like DST records or Africa Bambaataa records. It was foggy time. So, it was kind of like you hung out and you played a couple funk licks and played for this girl like B-side. She was on Celluloid Records and like Bill Laswell, and so I started doing a little bit of kind of some little sessions, but it was just kind of fun being in the studio and starting to learn a little bit. And and then my family moved. I was in my junior year, and my dad got a job out west, and so it was kind of like, well, we're going to California. We're going to California. Yeah, I was still young. I was I was barely 17. And then got tossed into Beverly Hills High School, which was great. And at that point, I was right. 17. You're right at that age where now you can drive, which obviously I hadn't been able to drive in New York. And so here, all of a sudden, you have sunshine, and I had a Datsun 240Z, and
that's a bad car, man.
Yeah, now it's I loved it. It was like
it's a great
$2,000 or something.
It's a real cool car.
And I went to Earl Shives and painted it black for $100.
Earl Shive.
And yeah, and then started trying to get into a band, and there was a band in Beverly Hills, Beverly BH, that was kind of this fusion band, I would say, like a jazz fusion band, instrumental, and they were playing all these parties. So I started going to all these parties, and I'm like, wow, who's this band? And it was great because they were really popular. They were, everyone would. It was, nowadays there's a DJ, but back then you'd go to tennis court parties or backyard parties, or and bands were always playing, whether they're cover bands, original bands, or it was that's just the way it was. And there was this one band, I was like, wow, the drummer's really great, and the bass player's cool, and they had all the girls were there, and so I was like, I want to get in that band. And I don't know how I did it. I weaseled my way in, and we thought, okay, let's get a sax player. And there was one, the great sax player in Beverly was a guy named Jim Oppenheim, who is now known as Boney James, plays like the Playboy Jazz Festival, and has put out a lot of records, and it's kind of funky jazz, I'd say way funkier than Kenny G or anything like that. But kind of, there were those guys like Richard Elliott and Jim Oppenheim or Boney James. And so anyway, so we became this kind of fusion band. And, but what was also pivotal at that time was when I moved to LA, I didn't know anybody. I mean, I was starting from scratch, and this is obviously pre-cell phones and internet. And so I spent a lot of time in my room, the lonely kid listening to, songs and writing songs and playing guitar to records. And my mom was actually extremely supportive. Both my parents were, but took me. I had heard about GIT, or the music, MI, Musicians Institute, but at the time it was called GIT, and then it branched into BIT, Bass Institute, and then Percussion Institute, and then VIT, Vocal Institute, and it was owned by this guy named Pat and Betty, Pat Hicks, and so you had to audition, you had to go in and have an interview, and I was scared to death, and I was trying to find a great teacher, and this is when they were way down on Hollywood Boulevard, but down by the freeway. But you had guys like Joe Diorio or Ron Eshtay, Don Mock, like these great kind of jazz fusion guitar players were teaching there. And they'd have these great guest speakers or little master classes. And it was, it was crazy. It was Robin Ford and Steve Morse and people like that coming and giving classes. And there's 30 people in the class. I mean, this is so early And I was always trying to find a guy, like a mentor, and there was a rock guy there who was. I mean, I'd studied in New York at Eddie Simon's Guitar Study Institute, which was Paul Simon's brother had a.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I've heard of him.
Yeah, it was like the first place you could. It was the first place you could go and take a rock class.
Was Arlen Roth teaching then? Because he used to teach.
He might have been. There was Bob Greco, and I took the rock class, and it was I kind of knew open tunings. I think I knew open D. But it was the first time I saw a guy, play Jumpin' Jack Flash right, or Brown Sugar right, or Can You Hear Me Knocking right, or and it kind of, and he was playing a black custom through a little champ, and I was like, geez, it was so great. And then I took a finger picking class because I was really into Paul Simon, I was really into James Taylor, Jorma Kekkonen from the Jefferson Airplane, that kind of style of Lightning Hopkins kind of playing. Not that I'm great at it, but it was enough, just enough. But it was great for songwriting because you start learning how to play Julia and that kind of Travis picking, the Donovan style of finger picking. So I was kind of into that. Anyway, so then with California, I'd already found, Zeppelin 1. I'd already found Blow by Blow. I'd already found Albert King. I'd already found Wired. It was kind of when Wired, that was the summer of Wired. So I just engulfed those records. I used to ride my bicycle around Central Park, somehow connecting crappy headphones to my cassette recorder.
Yeah, man.
That I had plugged into my stereo to copy Wired and Blow by Blow. And I would just listen to those two records. I mean, maybe for a year. It was anyway. So then moving to LA, I was trying to find a community. And what was great back then is I was taking a driver's ed class, and the kid in my driver's ed class, oh, you should meet my brother. He's a guitar player. And truly one of the first people I met in LA was this kid named Val McCallum, and Val plays.
Oh yeah, he was Jack Shit, or what's his
right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I've known Val since we were 17.
That's so funny.
And so here I go, and I walk in. It's funny. I just saw him a couple of weeks ago, and I reminded him of the story because we were talking to Buzzy Featon. It was crazy. It was just
that's funny, man.
And I'm telling Buzzy, I go, great. So I come to LA, and the first guitar player I meet is Val. And the second one was Michael Landau. So
holy shit.
Holy shit, I got to practice. You know? And Val's in his room playing to Wired as well, or Blow by Blow. And I thought, oh God, here I thought, I was something, and I ain't shit, So, and you just kind of hang out with them. It's not even like we were partying. We were just like listening to music and trading licks and just, you just felt like you had a comrade or a brother in arms in this. And then so anyway, with this band, not that I want to get caught complete in this, but we started playing Battle of the Bands. We started playing every club we could, I have like scars on my fingers from putting up posters up and down Sunset Boulevard with a staple gun and come see our band. We're playing the, Madame Wong's East, Madame Wong's West, the Troubadour, the Roxy opening up for the Yellow Jackets, or playing. So that's what you did. And you just hustle, and you play any party and take any gig. Like we're playing in Malibu for some wine tasting thing, but we're getting, $400, and it was, so you just do it. It's just, you're putting in the time, and you're eating crow, and you're learning how to play as a band. So I had that situation happening. And then also I met an artist named Jill Jones, whose sister was Tina Marie, who was on Motown. And she was like, listen, you should audition for my sister's band. I think she's looking for a guitar player like you. And So I got that gig. I actually auditioned and got the gig. And so it was great. So I'm playing this kind of fusion stuff, funky, bluesy stuff. And obsessed with Larry Carlton, obsessed with Robin Ford, obsessed with Buzzy Featon, loving Pat Metheny, but also still staying true to David Gilmour and Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck and Clapton and Cream, but also loving blues, but also loving folk. And then but it was, this is the thing that I always say, you don't realize that when you're sitting in your room and you're woodshedding like that you are actually building credits, so to speak. It's like hay in the barn, I call it. You're just kind of learning, and it's lonely sometimes, and you think, oh, I'm crazy, and you're just kind of obsessing on something. And I mean, with the advent of YouTube, it's such a gift, because I mean, just how we're talking now, but the fact that you can sit and go, how does so and so get, what is Eric Johnson's signal path? What is Eric Johnson using on the new tour? And you just dial it in, you look it up, and boom, there's Eric showing you what he's using. Or you're scouring for old footage of, I was talking to a friend of mine about fuzz faces the other day. It's like, is the 66 fuzz faces with the NKs, or is it what transistors, and is it Pompeii Gilmore, or is it, it's so you can go and research this stuff now, which is incredibly educational, but also dangerous financially, because then you want to chase this stuff and buy this stuff, and you can just push eBay or Reverb, and you can overpay for something and get it, if you really want it, which is fantastic. So anyway, yeah. So, but anyways, the other cool thing was the bass player in our band was taking bass lessons from Kenny Gradney, who's the bass player in Little Feat.
Okay.
So I'm literally doing all this, going to high school, doing my after school job, working, delivering pizzas, or working for a pharmacy, delivering medicine to, actors and musicians in the hills, and then going to band rehearsal till 12 o'clock at night. That was my day, 7 a.m. till 12 at night, or 1 in the morning, or 2. And then after high school, I literally finished high school, went to GIT, and stayed there for a few years until I was playing clubs, and then eventually met Melissa. I was in a band, and she I think just got signed to Island, and she was putting a band together, and she came down to see us play, and she was like, listen, you want to come see me play at the Roxy? I think you should be in my band. I'm like, oh yeah, really? So I went down to check her out the next night, and she was phenomenal. She had it all. Great songs, great stage presence, great musicianship. It doesn't matter to me. It's like the man, woman. I didn't care. It didn't even cross my mind.
Of course.
It's talent. She had as much talent as anybody around, and that I was seeing in that city. The other cool thing about that community back then, for example, if you would do a battle of the bands or something, like Santa Monica City College, you'd have, so like our band, so you have this weird jazz fusion band, you'd have bands like Rat, and then you'd have Anthem. There was a band called Anthem, and this is who's in Anthem, is Alan Johannes, who's an amazing guitar player, started a band called 11. You had Hillel Slovak.
Oh, wow.
And Jack Irons, who's, so it's the original, it's the original guys in the Chili Peppers, and Anthony and Flea are just hanging out.
Holy shit.
So that's like the community. So I would go see Brand X at the Roxy, and there's Alan Johannes waiting online, and we just hang out, and we became friends. And so, and they went to Fairfax. And then I saw the Chili Peppers play on literally their first night. It was at a club called the Rhythm Lounge on Melrose, and they were in day glow jumpsuits. I think they might have been slightly inebriated, and they were
No.
doing. I actually think they were tripping a little bit,
That
and
sounds more like it, man.
and they were doing flips and somersaults on this tiny little stage, and they had 4 songs. One of them being the Red Hot Chili Pepper song. One was probably, I think, Fire and Crosstown Traffic, and there was maybe another song, and it just grew. That's what it was like then. So then they played the On Club the week after or 2 weeks later, and we weren't like, oh, let's go see Anthony and Flea play, or let's go see Hillel. And I was friends with Hillel because Hillel worked at the Improv sweeping the floors, and we used to play the Improv. The Improv used to have bands back in the day. I know we're jumping around a lot, but
no, it's totally cool. This is real good. I didn't realize how prolific the community was there.
It was great. I mean, and then all of a sudden, you get turned on to like Robin Ford, or you see a friend of mine goes, hey, this person I know is recording at Lion Share Studios. You should come down and check it out. And you walk in the room, and the band is Buzzy Featon, Michael Landau, who's, I think 5 years older than me. And he's like playing acoustic guitar. Buzzy's the main guitar player. Michael's, the second chair.
That's so
and
wild.
It's like Nathan, who's Pops well on bass, and it might have been Picaro on drums. And you're just like, what? And you're just sitting back and you're watching how they record. And so I wanted to do sessions. At some point I wanted to get into that world, and slowly, somebody recommends you, and you keep your head down and you hope that the song isn't too hard or the chart is too hard, because I'm not a great reader. I might be slightly dyslexic, or I have I don't know. I'm I have a good ear. I don't say great, a good ear, and so I can, especially if it's pop songs or certain songs, I can pick it up, because playing in bands, you learn quickly, and kind of like even Nashville, and writing songs, there's a pattern, and you start kind of learning progressions, and as a songwriter, you start kind of going, okay, he's probably going to here on the pre-chorus, or he's probably doing, so. But what was really helpful when I first moved to LA, and I'm trying to think, it was before, I got a Porta studio, a Tascam 144 Porta studio, and I got a drum machine, a Drumatics 606 or 606, and a Juno 60. Like what I was doing is, like, when I was playing these clubs, everyone else was, partying a lot, which I was kind of too. But the thing was, I was like saving up and buying gear. So I would buy like a great overdrive pedal, or saved up to buy a better amp, or saved it. I love synths, and I also love like Brit pop synths, like Depeche Mode or Kraftwerk. I'm people who know me, I'm obsessed with Brian Eno. I'm just like, he's like my god. Lenoir and Eno to me are like, just because of the diversity and the brilliance of his career and how articulate he is. And people say, what do you travel with all the time? I travel literally with his diary in my bag. I always look at it and read it. It's called A Year with. Wait a second. A year. I'm going to grab it for you. I'll tell you.
Isn't he the guy that didn't he have it wasn't, it was one of those guys who's got a whole program it's a self-development program based around guitar. Man, I'll tell you right now.
I don't think it's Brian Eno, but I'll show you the book.
Yeah, show me that. And I'm going to look this up, because it sounds like something you dig.
Okay. So the book is called, here, there it is. See it?
A Year with Swollen Appendices, Brian Eno's diary. So it's just his.
But it's a diary he wrote in the 80s, and A Year with Swollen Appendices. appendices. So it's like, in the back of a book, an appendice.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
It's
Appendix.
not appendix, So it's basically what's interesting. He writes. I like the way he writes, but he's basically talking about, going to meet Bono because we're talking about doing this record at this castle next year. And it's, the Joshua Tree.
Right.
And it's talking about working with the Talking Heads, or he's talking about, but the way he talks about his family and his friends, and he's very descriptive. Anyway, it's not that. I mean, here's a guy that was in Roxy Music and then created some amazing music there, then leaves, goes to Canada, and basically does a sabbatical up there, meets Daniel Lanois and his brother who own the studio, and creates ambient music. I mean, boom, music for airports, discrete music, like so in touch with art that he said, you have these beautiful buildings, great architecture, but when you walk in it, they're cold, they're sterile. You have these voiceover radio announcements, Flight 102 is leaving. But he said, wouldn't it be great to have, something that kind of glues it all together, or something in the ether? And he creates this music that's there. It just is. And
what about that hooked you?
I think there was a part of me, it's not jazz. You're not listening to classical music, which can have that effect. My mom used to have the classical music on, or jazz on, and just in the background as she was working. And this was kind of my music that was on, and there was something very serene about it, and tranquil and beautiful, and I love the idea of like loops, and the way he would use tape loops, and the way Robert Fripp uses tape loops.
That's who has that course, by the way. It's Robert Fripp.
Oh, he does.
Yeah.
So that makes sense, because Robert Fripp came up with Frippatronics,
right?
Which is a whole thing of creating tape loops, and by doing that, it's actually an interesting way to compose. So, you have a theme that's playing, ba-da, and it just goes on, and then another theme. And basically what happens is they start circling around each other. And by circling around, it starts creating these counterpoint melodies, and it's just cool. I don't know. There's something in me it just struck a chord with. And it wasn't about, being Van Halen. It wasn't about, trying to be Jimmy Page or Jeff Beck or bend that note to get up to this thing and vibrato it the right way. It was, I don't want to hear a hook. I don't want to hear a lick. I just want to be taken somewhere. And I don't know. I just never feel like he's never let me down. And, here's an interesting thing for people is that if you think of these little bits that he creates, so the beginning of With or Without You, that that's Brian Eno. If you think of Beautiful Day, you too, that's Brian Eno. If you think of Coldplay, that's Brian Eno. So he creates these little nuggets, and when he's working with artists, now it would be interesting to go look at the songwriting credits. Is he getting a credit for that?
Yeah.
Is he a producer? Is he just getting the producer though? And he's giving them this nugget to be inspired to write something on, and it's just basically 2 bars, and that's an interesting way to write. Sometimes I do it sometimes. Like I'll create a drone or a thing like that, and then see where melodically or emotionally or lyrically I go as a writer.
So that's one of the things you like about that is it's a good prompt for you to go somewhere else. Okay. Yeah. That I understand, man.
Right. Which could, let's be honest, as musicians, you hear the first time you hear somebody play, or for me, outside the box, or, outside the pentatonic scale, when you're a kid, you're like, whoa,
right.
What was that? How did he get from there to there? Oh, he's mixing major and minor. Why is Clapton why do people love Cream? That tone. Yes, it's that tone, which is, I guess it's the woman tone, but there's another tone. It's that rolled off Marshall-y tone. But it's the way he plays those micro bends, those major minor bends, which Jeff Beck took to a whole other place.
Yeah.
Beck digs in and it's almost sharp, and he's playing half steps and so when you start getting your ear around that, it just expands your palette so much.
Man, you said a couple of things I want to ask you questions about. You said you were looking for a mentor. How did you know to do that, or what was prompting you that you thought you needed to do that?
I think for me, I was looking for somebody because I didn't have, I needed a teacher. I wanted to learn, So anyway, back to GIT, they're like, well, there's this guy in the back, this kid, this rock kid who's back there, and maybe talk to him. Maybe he'll give you lessons because he's a student here, but he's been teaching now because he's so good. And it turned out to be this gentleman named Steve Lynch. And Steve Lynch was in a band called Autograph later on. And Steve was, cool looking. He was probably 20 something, 22, 3. And, here I am 17 and a half, 18. And a guy who's 23 looks pretty cool to me.
Yeah.
And he had it all, and he was super focused and super organized and a great guitar player. To me, I was like, oh, there's the guy. There's my guy, and I had to kind of like, no, I really want you to be. And he's like, well, I don't know. I don't have the time. And so I basically he adopted me and I adopted him basically in a sense. But he was teaching me modes, he was teaching me, practice your scales. Just sit there in your room and practice your major scales. Just sit there. Don't learn the lick. Don't learn, just play me a G major scale. Play me a G minor scale. Play me the G major scale in these positions. Play me the 5, pentatonic, the 5 positions of the pentatonic scale. Don't think just up and down like a box. Think the length of the guitar. So connecting this pentatonic to this pentatonic to this scale to this scale, and you'll see that it'll start to repeat, and then you'll start to see the dots in your mind, and you'll start to see how you can eventually get up to the octave, and it's the same pattern again. But you'll start thinking laterally instead of, is that right? Yeah, laterally. The width of the neck, not just up and down, from the low E to the high E. And that I never really thought like, here's a G major 7th arpeggio. This takes you, I gotta charge my phone. This takes you out of the box. This takes you there. What is that thing that Steve Howe is playing? It's because he's playing a major 7th arpeggio. What is Pat Metheny playing there? He's going to a diminished in a scale, and he's chromatic, and so
he introduced theory to you in a practical, non-threatening, non-overwhelming way.
Yeah, in a non-threatening way and an inspiring way, and honestly in a patient way, because he was, for me, saying stuff like, really learn your vibrato. Learn, how do you really bend up to a note? How you, why certain, and we would look at solos. We'd look at certain guitar players, and you go, let's look at that solo, Larry Carlton, or look at that thing of Jeff Beck or Alan Holdsworth, so it was incredible. It is charging. Cool. So like having it was almost like an older brother.
Yeah.
It was really cool. And, I needed that at that point in my life. It kind of, probably, I don't want to say kept me out of trouble, but it was great because everything I could learn from lessons, I would apply in rehearsals or on a gig. And I would come back and go, oh, I used that major 7th over that chord. And he'd be like,
yeah, great, whatever. But for me, it was, I went and saw Buzzy Feeten play last night at the Central and with a band called Full Moon, and he uses, he does this lick and it's this da da da, and he was like, "Oh, let's figure it out." And so it was cool to have somebody you could go back to and geek out who was actually really good. And then I just ended up going there. I was gonna go somewhere else, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go. I want to stay in LA. I want to. I just want to, geek out and play guitar and learn to write songs and be in that community and start doing sessions. And that's what I did. And then from that, you just keep doing it all. And yeah.
A couple of things. First of all, I got Robin Ford coming on next week. You got any specific questions for him? If you want, let me know. I'll ask him.
The thing about Robin is I saw him. I knew about his work with Joni or Tom Scott and Paul Butterfield, and I heard him on records. And then the first time I saw him, I think it was at Santa Monica City College. He was playing, I believe it was Larry Carlton 61 ES335, and then we were lucky enough to open up for them at the Roxy when he was in the Yellow Jackets, and that band was ridiculous. Every musician in that band was world class, and I, followed him around like a puppy, and I was like, "Show me a lick." 2 shows a night, and we played all weekend. And I was like, "Show me a lick of the day," and he'd show me a little lick, but he was supportive, and I walked up to him literally 15 years later somewhere when we kind of reconnected, and I said, you were. I just told him that little story. Of course he wouldn't remember, and I looked different. And I said, that moment of you being so supportive of me and patient, meant the world to me because he was a hero. And we become friendly, and we talk guitars, and there's certain guys you just go, wow. He came to my house once and we hung out, and he was showing me descending 4th and 5th chords pentatonically. and it was like,
of course.
It was like, don't you know this? And I was like, and they were simple little voicings and just descending. And I'm slightly, I don't want to say retarded, but you're with a guy like that. And, we wrote a track. I think we actually did a little track, and I have it somewhere. And we were because he was gonna do something with Michael McDonald, and nothing really happened. But we hung out, and he's a really interesting guy, and just like he reads a lot. Or I saw him in a restaurant once. He was just reading spiritual books, and he's just one of those guys. And I don't want to say like he's an angel. It just keeps coming in, and we just keep weeding out of. I bump into him, and he's like. I was at Henson recording, and he was recording down the hall, and he's like, "You got a Les Paul?" And I lent him one of my favorite Les Pauls, and then he brought it back. He was like, "This guitar is insane. Can I have it?
Can I have it
or buy it?" And I was like, "No, I can't. I would, but I love you." I was like, "I love you, Robin Ford, but I can't." When I had my studio there, I was always lending amazing people. Just guitars that I had because I was so happy to. That's what they're for.
Sure, man, to be played.
So, yeah, to be played.
Where'd you get that hustle, the work ethic from? Because it's clear that you didn't mind doing it, and it was a very natural thing for you. Does that come from any place particular, or?
I think if you have a passion and you have a curiosity, then in a sense it's not really work. It's more like, I have band rehearsal, I got to go. Or, I'm going to see somebody play, or there's a great story I've heard Paul McCartney say that he and John Lennon would drive, get on a bus and drive, go across town to learn a B7 chord, and I go, yeah, I get that. I've gone.
I like that passion plus curiosity. I like that.
Yeah, I think it's curiosity, and it's admiration. You know, there's certain things I've thought. Actually, I was thinking about this the other day, where you know, there's certain friends of mine who are guitar players, and you know, you sit with them, and they can, you know, they play like every lick on Van Halen 1. They just sit there and just like, oh, here's Van Halen 4, and it's exact and it's perfect, and you're like, jeez, that's so amazing. And I did that at one point. I love Eddie, you know, and I would sit there and I'd learn it, and then I forget it, and then I move on because I want to write. I don't know if it's my ego, but it's like I want to do my own thing. I want to write my own music, and not that I'm, you know, those guys. But I think what happens is, this is what's interesting. So I doing it my way, just kind of like, well, I'm going to just try and write songs and try and do this and come up with. But you have them as a reference. You can always kind of, oh, that's kind of a Van Halen lick, or that's a, you know. But I don't want to be that.
Yeah, I totally get that.
And also, I have this weird admiration for all these guys, that I have so much respect for them that I don't want to encroach on their, you know what I mean? It's like, how dare I try to be them? I don't want to be Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix is Jimi Hendrix. I'll never be Jimi Hendrix. And, you know, or Stevie Ray Vaughan, you know, is Albert King, and it's Hendrix, and you can hear his influences, but it's his own voice.
Yeah.
You know, and there are guys that are out there that I'm friends with that can do Stevie, and they're amazing. They're like incredible. And I don't know if I'm just too ADD to just sit there and just play one. I mean, I guess, you know, I'm friends with Keith Scott, who plays with Bryan Adams, who's an amazing guitar player. People don't realize how amazing Keith is. Plays John McLaughlin. Like, he's a great guy.
Wow.
And I could hook you up with him. He's a good friend. And he you know, he and I talk. We just text. We're like text buddies. And we don't get to see each other that much. But we're always like, oh, Jeff Beck's playing. We should go. And I haven't seen him since the last time we went to see Jeff Beck. It's bizarre. But then we'll talk about gear, and we talk about the road, or we talk about pedals, but he's a guy that, what was my point?
You're talking about that. It's you know,
right. Oh, so this
and
is my
I
point.
totally get it. It's just not rewarding.
No, this my point is that here's Keith Scott, who can play John McLaughlin, who can play Scatterbrain perfectly.
That's phenomenal. If you could play John McLaughlin,
yeah, he like Birds of Fire and all that stuff, and really gets it, you know, understands it, and kind of that's where he sits. But this is why he's a great musician to me, you know, as a great rock guitar player, and is because he takes that and then he plays 5 notes in Run to You that are great, or he plays the solo and Everything I Do for You. That's kind of Gilmour-esque, and it's a beautiful melodic solo. That to me is maturity in class.
Yeah.
Economy to me is that's why I love Mike Campbell, you know.
Yeah.
And I've seen it firsthand, where you go see Mike play, whether it was with, you know, the Heartbreakers or his band Dirty Knobs, and a lot of times I've seen him at, you know, post NAMM show jam on a Saturday night promoting a Duesenberg guitar, you know, which I love. And there's Mike with his band, and I know some of the other guys in the band. I've worked with some of them, and Mike's playing through a Tweed Deluxe and a Fender Princeton Reverb, or a 52 Deluxe, I believe it was, and a Fender Princeton Reverb. And what was he playing? You know, a couple pedals. And kind of low output pickups, but it's his vibrato, it's his tone, it's his economy of playing, and you just like, and then somebody will sit in and they're playing through some high gain amp, and it's just a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy's playing 1,000,000 notes, but it's like, dude, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Just sit down, you know, you're missing this. And I think what happens is that's the only thing that sometimes bums me out about certain things. It's like, you know, there's, I don't know. I don't want to go down that place, but it's just, here's a good example of that. The one thing, so I'll use Bon Jovi as an example, right? So here's, Phil X and me, right? And Phil is awesome. I love Phil's playing, and Phil he's just gifted. He's a great rock guitar player. He and I our styles are different, and that doesn't mean, this is what I have to hold on to. Maybe Phil will disagree, but I have to hold on to the fact that it's like I do what I do and Phil does what he does.
Yeah.
And I respect what he does. Maybe he respects what I do. I don't know. I never flat out go, "Do you like my playing?" Or because
it doesn't matter really either.
It doesn't. It can't matter. You have. It's like that saying. You do you, I do me, and everybody's good. But what's worked really well is our tones are slightly different, our styles are slightly different. So I really get off supporting him and playing off of him and us doing our thing, and it's fun. It's really fun. And so for me, who I haven't toured I used to tour with Melissa, obviously, and Rod Stewart. I toured with him for years, and so then I stopped just to write and produce and concentrate on that, because I wanted to make things that lasted. And when you're touring, and when you're a sideman touring with Rod Stewart or whomever, is at some point for me, you're getting a lot of experience live, which is you have to do it. You have to know how to do that and work with a band and be a band guy and have drumsticks thrown at you because you're rushing, or your gear break in front of fucking 50,000 people, or how do you survive in a gig where shit is falling to pieces, and how do you smile through that, and how do you move, and how do you support? I'm standing next to Rod Stewart. How do you support this guy?
Yeah.
And look cool and do your gig and remember the songs and make it look effortless. Now that's great. That's everyone needs to do that. But at some point for me, I wanted to create something which is good or bad. And how do I know unless I record it and listen back and go, "Oh, that's awful," or "Oh, I'm getting better," or "That tone needs to be brighter," or "This is why an AC30 sounds this way. This is a Marshall 50-watt plexi. Oh shit. Oh right. This is AC/DC. This is Zeppelin. This is Mike Campbell. This is." So you start learning your tones. You start learning your amps. You start learning what these pedals do. You start learning the difference between pedals that are pre and post. Why does the edge sound like that? Why does this person sound like? So it's the arena that I was starting to playing with these artists, rock artists that were playing arenas, is that you have to learn, or I had to learn, to fill up sound. So with Melissa, it was a 4-piece. So it's kind of, singer, she's playing acoustic, one guitar player, bass and drums. And I was occasionally playing some keyboards to, or literally holding pads. Some of certain songs I would hold a drone, like we were talking about before, or a loop, like the way Bill Frisell does, and it's just this drone, and we're playing over in the key of E, or we're playing in G, and you have this thing. And anyway, so that's just basically what I started learning, how to make my sound bigger. And that doesn't mean more distorted. That doesn't mean more maybe more processed, but spread it out, using delays and reverbs to fill up sound. So in an arena, it's like, here's a stereo ping pong delay, and that's from researching guys that I admire. I like Johnny from Coldplay. I think he's amazing.
Yeah.
He uses some of my pedals, which is also pretty flattering. And that I helped design with Vemurum. And so what happens is you start seeing people that are kind of coming from the same place. So I don't know, I'm jumping around a lot, but
no, it's all good. Let me ask you this. So when you wanted to get into more production and creative, right? What percentage of that do you think was, I don't even know if this is a valid question or if you can quantify this. How much of that was curiosity driven and how much of that was, man, I'm just an ambitious guy and I want to learn more?
I never really saw it as ambition. I saw it maybe as control, because when you do sessions, when I was coming up, you do sessions and you have a couple pedals and a couple amps, and then, hopefully you hear the record and your guitar is up in the mix or the solo sounds a certain way. But a lot of times I would hear stuff that I would play on and you go, oh, the guy didn't put any delay on my guitar on the solo. He didn't do anything. And he kind of made my guitar too bright. And he didn't pan that other guitar against the acoustic. Shit, really? Really, he's missing the whole layering process. Or he moved on because he was worrying about another song. And then when he went back to mix this song, or he didn't care. It just wasn't, he was thinking about the vocal and he just didn't really care about the guitars. So I started listening to everything. I was about, I think that vocal should have been more compressed. I think, in the chorus, it should have had a different kind of delay on it, or the drums should have gone from a tighter sound to a more of a room sound in the chorus, or there's a way to make that chorus pop more by layering and creating dynamics with instruments, not just guitars, but with synths. And that's why I love synths too, or just different kick drum, or I don't know. So you start going. And the other thing is, as you're jumping from session to session, you're working with different producers. You're working with certain guys and, iconic guys. And you go, wow, he's so, because as the guitar player, you got to stay a lot.
Yeah.
So you would cut the basic track and then the guy would go, hey dude, just hang out. I'm going to do vocals with her for, or him for a while, or I'm going to do some, whatever his layering process was. And you sit there and you're like, okay. And now at some point, just because I was curious, I would just sit there and watch how this guy would produce. I would watch how he would talk to the artist, or just how how the song would start becoming a record from a basic track. And what was he thinking to add in order to create dynamics, not dynamics just in the way we tracked it. Okay, come down on the second verse, go to the hi-hat, chorus, you're going to the ride cymbal, and we're overdubbing toms on top of the groove, and not that stuff. I'm talking about how do you layer instruments in order to create dynamics in a pop way or a rock way, or a lot of the records I was working on. And then what happens is you start meeting other guitar players that are really good at, guys like Tim Pierce, and I would play, sometimes I'd go in and play on a record and there'd be other guitars on it. And I go what the fuck is this? You don't need me.
Yeah.
Oh, we just want, now probably Tim wasn't available to come back, so they called, let's call that guy. And, but who cared? I didn't care. I was just kind of getting in the rooms but all of a sudden I was like, who's Michael Thompson? Who's Tim Pierce? Right. Who's this guy? Not that I ever really, I don't think I was replacing. I was kind of adding stuff, or maybe Tim didn't play acoustics because he had to go. So you start going, well, to be fair, the artist would leave the room and you go to the engineer and go, dude, solo those guitars for a second. And you're like, oh my God, what is that delay? Oh, it's a PCM 42 that he plays through his thing. And it's like, what? How does he, what does he do? What do you mean you mic the speaker and then it goes into a mic pre and then it's fed into his effects? What do you mean it's post? What does that mean? And so you start learning this stuff and you're like, oh, I see. And then as you start working more, you try to you try to throw yourself at the altar of Bob Bradshaw, to have him build you a little pedal board or a rack to that you could start sounding like these guys. If you want to work, you had to kind of have that sound.
So
What's a tri-stereo chorus? What are these sounds?
You basically did the same thing with respect to the woodshedding, how you said, all that time you're in your room studying, it's not wasted. You think it is, but it's just you're learning and building. And you basically repeated that same educational process, self-education, with respect to recording.
But the thing is, what's nice nowadays, what's nice is when I met Tim, it's almost like these other guys. When you meet certain guitar player, Landau or these guys, or Lukather. Like Lukather was always supportive of me. Now he could have been a real dick, and he wasn't. He had confidence, but he wasn't cocky. I mean, a good confidence cocky, but he was like, yeah, man, yeah, Johnny, you're doing good, man. So you had that kind of support, which meant the world to me.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
Here's a guy that's plays unbelievable guitar solos. I just did the Olivia Newton-John story, the movie, and had to go back and play physical or play those parts. And this is what's great about being in this community. I freaking called him. I was like, what the hell did you use on those records? What were you thinking on the solo on physical? He's like, I don't know. I played 3 solos and they put it together and I fucking left. I'm like, oh, okay, great. What were you playing through? A Les Paul and a Blackface Deluxe. Okay, cool. Thank you. Bye. Or see ya. And so I actually called him to see if he wanted to come in and play the solo because I thought it would just be a fun way for us to hang out.
Right.
And have him come to my studio and just, because we're pals. And he was like, no, I'm on tour. I'm sorry. And so I had to learn it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, learning Steve Lukather solos is not a...
It's a great solo.
Quick project.
I'm just saying like the solo in Rosanna is a great solo. But, I don't know. It's fun to sometimes just... Now I'm getting paid to do it. I'm getting paid to like learn his solo and redo the track. I'm getting paid to like figure out the guitar part. And this was, 4 months ago on downtime. I'm not writing. So I'm like, oh, it's taking me away from my songwriting. It's taking me away from producing new artists. But it was for Delta Goodrum, who I love and an old friend. And we've had hits together. And she's like, listen, can you help me do the soundtrack to this movie or this that we're doing? And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to. And she's easy to work with, and it's an Australian company. And it was, I see it as an exercise also to redo Xanadu, the song Xanadu. So there's a good example. It's like Jeff Lynne wrote Xanadu.
Okay.
So if you put on Xanadu, it's an ELO song. There's actually a version of it online where I think ELO did it or Jeff Lynne did it. And then he recut it with Olivia. And it's awesome. Like the production is stupid. It's so good. It's like Queen, it has just the layering of vocals but I had to sing all those background parts. So I'm learning all those, and then, you start layering these parts. And so we geek out and learn all the background parts, and we sit there and like, what is that note? What is that part? And what's the guitar tone? And, let's try this guitar. Let's try the gold top with P90s and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it wasn't a gig where you're like, oh, I'm writing songs that are going to be on, someone's next record and Kiss FM. It's like, it's you see it more as it's a fun gig, and you learn stuff and you're helping a cause, and you just try to have a positive attitude about it.
Let me ask you this. You said before that you probably don't have a great ear, you have a good ear. So that's probably not accurate. You probably have a really good ear, like a great ear, I would imagine, because you can't crank out the amount of at least if by having a good ear means knowing what people want to hear, I would say you have a great ear, right? Because you can't put together the shit you've done without, like, fucking a clock is, even a broken clock is right twice a day, but we're not talking about twice a day. We're talking about, a consistent, steady stream of great work you put together here. And I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, just numbers.
Blow it, baby.
So my question is, music is unique because it's artist to artist and everybody's going to do their own thing, but you obviously have to have some sort of a template that you like. A song's got to have X, Y, and Z, or I'm building it based on this. If it doesn't have this, it's like the old, well, a house needs a good foundation. What is, for you anyway, what are like some of the critical things that have to be present for something to work like that?
It's interesting. I was writing last night, and to me, I call it the big three.
Yeah.
That the melody, lyric, and music have to connect, and they have to emotionally connect, because sometimes you can have a good track, but the lyric's weak, and there's a place for all that. But, I try to be consistent with that, where I try the melodies. I think it's about emotion. So the melody, the music, and the lyric have to be connected in an emotional way. And that can be where you have an up-tempo song, but a sad lyric. So sometimes a sad lyric or a fuck you song is fun to dress up with tempo. That's kind of a cool thing. But I'm also saying that melodically and phonically, things have to connect.
Right.
And I'm weird because I'll listen to something and like one word will just not sound right to me. And sometimes it's because that word's not working, but it's also how it sounds. It's a phonic.
Totally get it.
Yeah. So, and also, when you're doing, I guess, pop, you look at pop music and everything, your verse melody is here, your B section melody starts to ascend, and then you try to stay below, the first note of the chorus. The first note of the chorus, it should be one of the high, if not the highest note, one certainly higher than your verse and B section. Now, sometimes it'll work in reverse, where it's, where you're creating this ascension and then you do a drop, and then the melody doesn't have to have such a lift, but it's almost like an anti-lift, so you can do that too. So it depends on the song, and it depends on the lyric and the situation. But I think that in the back of my mind, I'm always kind of keeping that together. I'm always trying to be conscious of that, because if you can take a Shawn Mendes song, and there's some songs on his record, or there's a bunch of songs on his record that I think are great. They're really well crafted songs, and I think it's a great place for where he's going. Like I'm some fucking gatekeeper, but it's it's just, to me, it's In My Blood is a great song. I don't care if somebody else sang it, but it's just I relate to that song, whether I'm 20 or I'm at my age. I still I relate to that song, and I get it. And I actually like that he has big drums in the chorus. I like that it's not just so sugar that it's all programmy, or it's just there's some balls to that song, which I like, and I think that's important for that kind of music to be made as well. There's an art to that kind of small acoustic pop music too, with beats, but which I love, and I was lucky to be a part of some of that. But it's just it also is you have to explore you have to expand your palette, so to speak. So
you're also, in a way, you're very much like a poker player, like looking for a tell. So your antenna's got to be really fucking keyed on, because if you've got to be really alert for that one word that doesn't really do it, and that's what's got to be changed, or that one note that has to be lowered or higher than the other note, or the chord that's just not syncing with something that was 4 measures earlier.
sometimes it's weird. I've had this where you're working on a song and you're like, I'm always looking for this, where it just goes, where the Lego snaps together.
Yep.
And sometimes you're like, you're trying to find it, and sometimes you're thinking like, oh, what's wrong? Why am I not feeling like fed by this meal? And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, let's add the harmony on top of that in the chorus. And then let me put this little guitar lick added to the chorus. And then the song for some reason just goes chink. and you don't know that until it happens, but you have to stay in the zone in order to go fishing. And sometimes I hear that in my head. Sometimes I absolutely know, like, I got to do this, this, and this is going to get me here. And then sometimes I used to have this, there's a saying, it's like, let go of the rock and flow down the river. And sometimes you just have to let go and trust that the idea is going to bloom into something. And that's the faith of songwriting. You just have to do it all the time and trust that the song will help write itself. It'll reveal itself. Now, sometimes it reveals that it's crap, but sometimes it reveals that there's something in there that's worth chasing. And if you commit to that, it won't let you down.
Do you find a lot of times, like, it's 2:00 in the morning, you're leaving the studio and you're like, fuck, I don't know what's going on. Let me leave this for a day or two, come back with fresh ears, and then it's much clearer?
I have to get a song to a certain point before I can let go. And it's really annoying to everyone around me. Because it happened last night. It even happened last night. We were working on something and we didn't start writing till late. And I had to make sure that we had the song. Now that can mean just putting it down on an iPhone.
Sure.
Like, we have the lyric. These are the melodies. These are the chords. Good. I can let go. I can sleep.
So you have to have those three components down before you're ready to, like, move on. The melody, the lyric, and the music. You've got to at least get that down.
Yeah. I just have to have that in a place where I can let go. Right? I mean, that feeling. It's like you at least want it to sound a certain way where you go. And now I'm much better than I used to. I mean, when I was a kid, I always had to, at my Porta Studio or my ADATs, or I had to make sure that the drum beat was right and the sound of the reverb on the snare was, it's like I'm trying to get way better at just like, okay, there it is. And or just a basic like in Logic, I just kind of like I'll go, okay, here's the intro, here's the pre-chorus, here's the chorus, and then that's the basic structure. And I know in my head we can always fly shit around and mute stuff and add stuff, and so I have that mood that's happening. Whether like we were talking about the drone or there's something that's pulling you in, and then which is what helped me sell the idea to the people I was working with. Right. So, they were like, oh, sounds cool, but then once we got into it, I was playing on acoustic guitar, and then when we actually put it down for the first time, it was on acoustic guitar. And by doing that, we started seeing the cracks. You can hide it in the production or the track, which we hadn't even put down yet, but it was gussied up because it had all the little, and delays and shit. But when we sat and played on acoustic guitar, it was like, oh, you have to go to that note. You have to go to this note that sets up this melody to go into the chorus, because that, and that lyric isn't right because it's too many words. We're getting caught on that. And that artist is never going to sing that. So you have to therefore be conscious of who you're writing for in order to tweak the syncopation of the lyric in order to accommodate who you want to hopefully sing that song.
So let me ask you this. You just described 3 or 4 different things. You sat there, you played it on acoustic guitar, you thought about the note, you played the notes, and you understood. How much of your success, in your opinion, is just flat out you're willing to fucking work a little harder to get where you need to go?
I don't, maybe that's part of it, I don't know. But what was interesting, so after we did the acoustic bit, we were like, okay, we kind of have it. We got it. This is cool. Like, this is the verse. Here's the chords. Here's the chorus chords. And it's interesting because it doesn't goes to the, and then the guy I wrote it with went over to the piano, and we were killing time for a couple minutes. And he started checking the key, and he was playing on the piano, but he kept going to a different chord as the second chord in the verse that I was playing. Whatever. It was an E minor, and I was going to a D to a C. It was capo, or whatever key we were in. He was going E minor to a G, which did something to the melody. All of a sudden we were like, oh, but it was a cool voicing of a G, And I was like, that's better. But you could also play that in the bass, and I could play the D. And it's almost like when you play a D with an F sharp in the bass, and you create that tension. So we were like, oh, that's better. And then when we started playing the chorus, he was playing it slightly different voicing or different bass. And I was like, no, I go to the minor as the second chord, and then to the major, then to the minor as the last chord. And then he was doing it anyway. So the point is that he just organically going over to the piano and playing the song with his voicings, these beautiful, he's a real piano, really good piano player. And I was like, oh, that's better. It made our simple melody way smarter. Right. Because I'm playing cowboy chords, and he's went over and started playing Elton Johnny Coldplay voicings.
Proper voicings,
and you're like, yeah, and you're like, oh shit, that's awesome. So it made us look really smart all of a sudden. So I was like, come in the room and put it down. You play the piano in the verse and the chorus, and I'll go in and rechange the bass. But the drones that were there still work because they were a common tone.
Right.
So it was like, oh, yay, cool. I was playing this little thing in the piano, which could have been a guitar. It was like a diddle, 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 like a little keyboard with delays, but it was still droning over the key center of the song. And now our movement, we could go, oh, let's go here. Oh, this works great. So that's kind of what happened. And then once we had that, then we dumped it into Pro Tools, and then he sang it till fucking 3 a.m, which is not really where I wanted to be at 3 a.m. But we had to do it because he was leaving, and some of the people in the room were leaving, and I had to get it done. I just had to do it.
I'm hearing a lot of what you're talking about is just really not to take anything away from your talent at all, but the sixth sensing. A lot of this is just banging the shit out of it, and exploring it and being willing to open up a bunch of different can of worms and see what's going on inside and push this button and try this thing. And it's just outworking the next guy, man, which is great, which is how most shit usually happens.
It's outworking the next guy. It's a deeper thing. It's like knowing this is where therapy comes in. This is I'm a piece of shit, and I have to work slightly longer at times and harder because I suck.
Right. Right.
And it's a bit of that. It's
interesting.
I'm not as good as that guy, so I will never be that guy. And that's a hard thing to learn to be okay with, because that shit'll kill you. And it still eats at me. Whether as a guitar player, it drives me crazy, and where I think, oh, I'm doing pretty good, and then it happens on even with on the road. I'm like, oh, I'm doing pretty good, and Phil will walk over and play some lick. I'm like, whoa, I'll never that lick, but that's okay, or I'll never be Alan Holdsworth, or I'll never be Pat Metheny. And
you're not? Aren't you okay with that?
No.
Really?
But I
Wow.
am. I'm better. Because it's like I'm older now, so it's like I'm not going to play any faster. I was probably way faster when I was, 20. I played way faster, and my sweep picking was better, and it's like, and then at some point you're like, who cares? It just, I mean, I'm not playing Gazaris or the Starwood,
Right.
I get to play, and that was, part of the appeal that when you look at even bands like, when you look at Bon Jovi, is that when you start analyzing guitar players, even like Richie Sambora, Richie's a blues rock guitar player. He's not a shredder.
Nope. Absolutely.
I would say, and I don't mean this as a diss, but guys like even Warren D. Martini from Rat, were more shreddery, more, more in the Van Halen-y. But even I don't even consider Eddie a shredder. I'm not. I'm talking.
He's not just shredding for shredding's sake, if that's what you're saying.
I mean, what is it? Who's a shredder? I mean, I guess Zakk Wylde.
Yes,
I guess Zak's
100%. Yes.
So, but I don't consider Eddie a shredder, because I've stood next to him, and when you watch him play, he has so much feel, and his pocket is so good. His rhythm playing is, it's so, I get emotional watching him, because and you watch his hands, and it's not that he's going, it's not this wide, chord, though it's kind of weird cowboy, like 2-fingery chords, and you go, I get that. I understand what he's doing. We all do, but then he'll play, what Eddie was great at is that the way he would use whole tone scales. And I don't even think he knows what a whole tone scale is. I asked him, I was like, you're in A minor, okay? What the fuck are you thinking? Like, here you go. A minor to C, or A minor to C, or whatever. A minor, here's a little chord progression. What are you thinking? Go. And he's like, well, I think A minor here, and I think kind of that's an A minor here, as he moves up the neck. And then so he's thinking almost like in triads, little A minor triads. And but he goes, so I think that, but then I'm reaching for a melody. I'm reaching for a hook, and I kind of play it, and then out of playing it, I find it. You start to hear him do it. It's wild to watch him work out a solo. And there was one solo he was doing where, he's doing it for a couple minutes, 10, maybe 5-10 minutes. And he was like, let me go home. I'll bring it. I'll do it tomorrow. But the fucker got up at 5 a.m. and worked it out, and came into the studio. And he's like, yeah, I know, John, I got that solo. I'm like, oh yeah, let's see there, tough guy. and he starts playing, and he really worked out this solo, and it has one of his kind of beautiful, just ascending licks and modal, classically kind of, just Eddie. Yeah. And it's just like, oh man, it was so good. It was so good.
Man, I wanted to get back to that thing you said a minute ago. Far be it from me to try to give anybody counseling. That's kind of scary. But like around, I think we're the same age. I'm 54. Is it you my age?
Yeah.
When I was around 49, I had just a ton of shit went down at once. And when stuff happens to me, like really, unpleasant, as life does throw you curveballs, I always try to get something out of it, because I don't feel like a victim then. I say, okay, what was a lesson I can take away from here? And I had a succession of things. And the thing I took away most was, man, I am responsible for a lot of the stress that's going on based on how I react to stuff, and I am done. And it was just something happened. I was ready for that, and I was literally fucking done. Because I used to be like, so like, like sounds like you, like obsessively, like just this is not enough. This is not enough. And I'm like, no, I'm done. And my life has gotten so much better, man. I mean, it's.
But are you talking as far as work or personal?
Yeah, no, work, anything, just any stress that I'm responsible for. I just stopped playing that. I just refused to participate in outside stress. If I have to deal with something, I deal with it and I dismiss it. And,
Right.
I just refuse to
But sometimes that's,
create stress.
I try to say that, but then it's, sometimes you got to sit there and do what the A&R guy wants you to do and make changes in the track. And I don't really want to do it because I think, what I've done is great. But he's like, no, you got to lose that and you got to do that, or the key's wrong or the tempo's wrong.
If you got some guy breathing down your neck to do something, that's not stress you create. But I just like.
But that's part of the, this is where this is where the battle I go through. So where, my old managers used to say to me when I would talk about this kind of stuff, and he'd go, you have to remember you're in a service business.
Yes.
And your job is to, part of the reason they're coming to you is also that they can count on you to deliver, that you're bringing your talent, but also that you can be a team player and accommodate them and be a facilitator and a conduit to hopefully make the album that the artist and the record company are trying to get from, to come to fruition for everything. So sometimes you have to, and I used to go through this with certain artists or certain singers that used to come off these TV shows, where they 6 months before they did the show, they were bartenders,
right.
but they're singers, but they were playing in bands, and then they win the show, and then luckily guys like me, they want them to. You get put in a room with these guys, and they want to, or gals, and they want to write.
Right.
And so it's usually myself and another writer and this person, and you're like, okay, and you're trying to get, a song out of them that plays by those things we talked about. The three
lyric, and music,
and I have a big chorus, and they want to do something completely different. And so I don't want to say you're babysitting, but sometimes it really sucks being the first guy that writes with one of those people, because they're like, no, man, now I won this show.
Yeah, I just won, so I got creds. I'm the smartest guy in the room.
I want to make my record,
right.
And this is how this party's going, and they don't want to play ball, and you're trying to and the drag is, tomorrow they're with another dude like me, and the day after they're with another person, and it's and then it turns into a competition between all these cats or gals or guys that are in these rooms, in these camps all over the city or Nashville or wherever. And we're all trying to come up with a hit.
But let me ask
you, with
this.
A person that doesn't want the hit, with the person who's like, I don't really want to do a concept record with, and you're like, God. And then you have the A&R guy calling you going, does it sound like a hit? I'm just trying to, this guy wants to, put like words that you've never heard in a pop song in. Just, some, like, you're writing the verse and about a relationship, and he's like, he just wants to throw in some, and you're like, that's never going to fly. What do you mean? And then so like, how much do I want this cut? How much do I want this job? How much when you do this for, 15 years, you hit this place that we're talking about, and then all of a sudden it's like, and I went through this period where, I mean, I know that we're supposed to be talking about guitars, but this is kind of,
let me tell you, this is not really about guitars. This is like about you. It's in a framework of about guitars. So,
right. But the thing is, it all affects my playing and it all affects. So here, in 2000, in the early 2000s or the first 10 years, I mean, I was working 24/7, sure. And luckily, having success with, the albums that I was or the songs I was writing or records I was working on, or both. Sometimes when I was writing and producing, I was happiest when I was, like I still stand by Ashley Simpson's first record. I will, that's like, I'm proud of that record. I'm really proud of Michelle Branch's first record. I mean, I don't know why, maybe I'm just senile and those are the only two I remember, but for some, those were pivotal records for me personally, because it was somebody saying to me, go do it. We trust you, and you had a collaborator or collaborators that were into it and had the same goal. And, and everybody butts heads here and there. And, but you have a common goal, which is to try and make this the best it can be, whatever it is. I don't care whatever genre you're in. When Keith Urban and I wrote Somebody Like You, it's funny, we've talked about this. We both remember the writing session slightly different.
That's funny.
Like who came up with the lick, where the title came, where this came from, and I'm like, no, I was kind of doing my little Springsteen thing, and I kind of, there's a new love that I ever known. Sure feels good if I don't feel the way I do. I want to love somebody like you. I mean, that's to me where it came from, because it was just me. But it doesn't matter.
Right.
That's the point. Is we got the lick, and we got. But the classic thing is, we ran and got a banjo. We ran and got a ganjo, and we were like went and got a Dr. Z amp, like I saw you got one back to do the solo, and he went and grabbed his telly, and the demo was good. It had the EBow and the deli and the 4 on the floor, and it had this great, and that was basically the first day we met.
Right.
That's how we met, and we wrote that song. And he was at a place where he'd been writing for, I think, a while. This is my recollection. It's a long time ago, but so he was kind of like, do I even play this to the record company? He was, I don't know if he was beaten down or if he was frustrated. And he was writing with other people, and we talked, and we became really good friends. Which is the big plus for when you're working with people. It's like, some people are clients, some people you're just writing with, some people. But then once in a while, there's something that happens and you just become friends.
Sure.
Whether you're working together or not. Mm-hmm. That is the true sign of if you're still friends with somebody.
If you're not working with them and if you still connect.
Yeah. What if you don't get the next, I didn't get the next record. He's still my pal, Like how good is my ego that I didn't get the third record, somebody else did? Do I still want to be friends with that guy? Or am I pissed off that he didn't fucking use me for the record? Well, no, he didn't, or they didn't, or somebody wanted to make a change, or maybe they did. Now, am I going to hold that against that guy or gal, or are we cool? Because we had a lot of success together, or we created something special together. And where the maturity hopefully kicks in for me is, and it's been hard. I've had some where I've had to do some soul searching on this.
Well, of course, it's not a normal thing that you contribute to something, make it wildly successful, maybe something 2 or 3 times in a row, and then like the next time out, it's like, what? Like, it makes no sense.
Yeah. Because the record company goes, oh yeah, we know what the formula is. We're going to do it. The guy in house who's the president of the label, decides he wants to do it.
Is that how it works?
Well, it's happened. It's happened where it's like all of a sudden I'm going to do the third record, and what do you know? And you don't get the call, and then the artist doesn't call you, and then all of a sudden you talk to some of your friends, and they're like, oh yeah, I was just playing on the new so and so, and you're like, what? 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 I didn't get that call. You're not even to write a song. Even though you wrote the singles, you're on the last couple records, and you helped. Maybe you were part of the band. You become part of the essence of. You become this little, core, And then sometimes that core, because of their life changes, maybe it's drugs and alcohol, maybe it's the record company, maybe it's the boyfriend broke up with them, maybe they broke up with the girlfriend. Who knows what it is? That's all part of being the guitar player, songwriter, producer. That's the real shit, because now how do you not sink into a depression when you're like, well, I must suck. I'm a piece of shit. Because
you can't take other people's shit on, man.
Yeah, but you do because we care. And I'm a fucking songwriter, motherfucker, and I'm a sensitive
bitch.
So because I'm a fucking flower, you know what I'm saying? So
it's their shit, man. That's not your problem, It's funny. I was up at Summer NAMM, and I was talking to a guy who's a buddy of mine who we became friends with after the interview, and he's probably played on 50 number one hits. And I was talking to him, and he described the exact same situation. He did the hooks for 3 number one hits in a row, and I think each single sold 2 million. And then the 4th one comes out, and he goes, I didn't even get the fucking call to play on the record. I'm like, what? It's exactly what he said. I'm like, it's a weird business, man.
And also what's weird is, so here, careful what you wish for. So here I am, whatever, a guitar player, geek, and trying to play on records. Then you get in there, and then you start writing songs, and you start kind of getting a couple cuts. I mean, you start working with like baby bands and that are have deals with record companies, and you get to produce a couple songs for their record. But then you get a cut. Like for me, early on, it was Joe Cocker or Bonnie Raitt, and you're like, wow, okay, this is good. And then you get a publishing deal. And for me, a publishing deal was so important. It was not a great deal. And now that I know all the tricks and the games and the in perpetuity and reversions and, cut and release and suspensions and, there's a class I could teach. But back then I was so grateful that somebody said, you know what? We're going to give you X amount of dollars, and your job, we believe this is your job, is to write songs. And therefore you don't have to do as many sessions. And because, they were giving me an ulcer anyway at times.
Yeah.
And then you dive into your dream, which is like, I'm going to write songs every day. And every day you're with a different artist or songwriter, and you learn your craft, and you have somebody that you can bring those songs to, other than, the girlfriend or any relation, and you go in, and this person goes, wow, you're getting there. That's good. Maybe, because she wants you to win, or he wants you to win, your publisher.
Yeah.
And then that leads you to a manager, or leads you to learning the community of A&R guys, and you start going in and you're playing your songs for this record guy or gal, and one of them goes, you know what? I want to put you in with so-and-so because I think the two of you, and then you get to hopefully write a song, and then that person loves working with you, and then that leads you to making their record or or doing a couple songs or eventually an album. And then, so my gig with Melissa Etheridge back, I use this as an example. So as her guitar player, I never crossed that boundary as a writer. I never said, hey, I'm a producer too, or I'm a songwriter too. That I learned a lot from being around her, being inspired to be around, seeing her discipline and her work ethic. And so, but I never, when I would go and play on her albums, my job was the guitar player, and to come up with parts and come up with licks and be a positive energy in the room and be supportive of her and be her, like her guitar player guy, But what ended up happening was we were in a situation where it wasn't going well in the studio because whoever was in charge was not sensitive to how she might have been struggling on with the songs or on that day, or trying to find the groove or the tempo, or if the key was right, or the melody, so no one was giving her feedback as a healthy reflection back to her. Which part of my job is to say, sometimes I almost say it's like juggling a balloon or juggling a feather. You're trying to keep it in the air, and you're just sometimes just barely tapping it to keep it afloat. And sometimes there's that, and then sometimes you got to be heavy-handed, and sometimes you just got to really go in there and just say, you're wrong, and this is fucked up, and this is. I mean, I've almost come to blows with certain artists. It happened once with a band where it was late at night, and the singer had been drinking, and he's like, "Where's my harmony?" I'm like, "You never recorded your harmony." He's like, "Yeah, I did." I'm like, "No, you didn't," and wanted to fight me about it.
That's fucking
literally
crazy.
Get into a fight. And I'm like, listen, just go out there and re-sing it. It's not a big deal. It's just, no, man, it's like, he thought I was pulling something.
Like, what'd you do? Steal his track?
Yeah. I stole his harmony and hit it.
Yeah. Right.
I'm like,
but isn't like if people hire you willingly, right? It's not like someone's put a gun to their head. I mean, maybe I'm too practical, but it's like if I hire someone for anything to fix my roof, I'm not going to fucking tell unless how would I tell them if I willingly hire them to do a job because I think they're competent? It's really weird.
You would think that, but it's not. It always becomes a collaborative thing. So, for example, I've done 6, 7 Bon Jovi records. Some started in there as a writer producer and wrote songs with John and Richie, and would play on the records a little bit, but to just kind of get the song going and try and maybe a couple little ambient kind of guitar things, but creating a bed for Richie to, for me to record Richie doing his thing, but also try and then try and get the best song out of those guys. But sometimes, like in any situation, my job as a producer is to not worry at times when I'm immersed in a record that, oh, this is my song. I wrote this song. That's dangerous because you're giving a little more love to your song than maybe track 4.
Yeah.
And track 4 means a lot to the artist because it's about something very personal. So if I'm doing my job correctly, I'm putting as much love, attention, and detail into every song. And by doing that, that means sometimes coming up with a part or a lick, like you were talking about this guy before, and you come up with this hook. And I've written hooks on people's songs I produce that are essential hooks to the song.
Sure.
And I'm not getting writer's credit. But that's part of the deal when you go in as a producer. Sometimes your job is like, maybe we should do this. And that's really production.
Yeah.
And it's part of the thing. And that's why when you think, and I think of guys, I don't know why Trevor Horn just popped in my head, but it's like, like Owner of a Lonely Heart, the combination of Trevor Rabin's guitar playing and those samples and those fills and the way they process the fills, or, you think of these stylized records, even Roy Thomas Baker with Queen and the Cars and the way the backgrounds were put together, or, you think of, those Frankie Goes to Hollywood, or they're very stylized records, and or Seal's first record, or they're very stylized, and it's now, is that the producer putting his signature on it, or like Jeff Lynne when he's putting the like Free Falling is a Jeff Lynne record, you just can tell.
Yeah.
So, but does it work? Yeah, it works. It's amazing, and that's why Wildflower, the Rick Rubin record, is a beautiful record because it's just very organic, and it's a great band, and Rick, making sure that the songs were great and the sounds were great. you know.
So I'm hearing that you're less concerned with putting your quote signature on it than just getting the shit done properly.
At times, you know, I mean, I have to be careful, you know, like whatever a record I've done with Sheryl Crow is not going to be a Kelly Clarkson record or a Pink record or a Bon Jovi record or a Van Halen record.
Yeah.
There's just, that would be, you know, then you have a sound, and if that sound goes away, then you're disposable, and you're going to be disposable anyway.
Sure. Yeah.
Because that's the nature of the business, you know, at times where, you know, I mean, I definitely had my period in my time where it was like, wow, I was the new kid, and everyone is like, yay, and you can get in the rooms with anybody, and then it's, you know, you have a certain amount of success, and you know, I made some money, and then things are a little different, and you're tired. You're just putting out output, and you get to a point where it's like, you're just doing it, and so you're saying yes to everything, but then you're not really pushing it because people want the same, what made that successful, and then you're not expanding your horizons, and you're not doing what you feel in your gut because you're doing what made you successful, and then that's a dangerous place. And that's unfortunately what happens with any artist, is that we like play the hits. We liked your hits, but you know, being a part of working with Bon Jovi so much is that, you know, I understand that you have to grow. You have to grow as an artist. You have to be able to. You have stuff to say.
Yeah.
You know, everything can't. You know, you're not 22 anymore. Those are time capsules. That's part of who you were at that age, and that's an appropriate record for 1989 or 94 or 2001. And you know, otherwise it's like it's just like you're repeating the same stuff. So to be able to continue to make albums and make sure those songs are strong and lyrics are strong is what we try to do, or what I try to do, you know, and try and grow as a musician too.
What's a project that you worked on where everything just fell into place? If there's such a thing.
Well, you know, I think like anytime in the beginning with someone, everyone's on good behavior. It's like, you know, blind dates, you know, or when you start dating somebody, you know, everything's new and everything's exciting, and, you know, they're breathing and blinking, and, you know, and you're in love. And it's
that's so funny.
And, you know, you're trying
they're in love.
You're, you know, so there's that, you know, so I'd say there's certain records with a few artists that I've worked with, or songs, and you go, wow, this just happened. And what's really nice is that 8 months later, or a year later, or 6 months, you know, all of a sudden there's the video, or you're driving your car and you're like, fuck, there it is.
Yeah.
And it's, even then, sometimes it's hard for me to enjoy it because I'm listening to the mix. I'm like, oh, I should have used the AC30 instead of you know, or I should have used Telly because the Telly spoke better in that part than the Les Paul. I still do it.
But that's tough. I'm like, you know, that's really hard not to, though, because I could see that being really difficult not to do that, because that's what you do for a living. You listen to shit and deconstruct it and break it down and figure out how to make it as best as possible. And in theory, with rare exception, you never hit the top. I mean, it's, you know, it's like being the strongest guy in the gym. It's not going to fucking happen.
Yeah. And then you hear somebody else's album and you go, God, I wish I could do that. Or I wish I had done that. Or you hear a songwriter's album, or you hear, you know, like I hear like Ray LaMontagne, and you're just like, oh God, it's so, or you know, some of Beck's records, and you're just like, you know, with Smokey, you know, you hear Smokey's guitar playing on a key change, or the last Beck record, I'm forgetting the name of it. It's but even the other stuff, and you see them live, and it's such a great group band.
It is,
you know, and You got Joey Warnaker on drums, who's, you know, so when I went and saw Roger Waters 6 months ago or a year ago, I'm watching Waters and I'm like, God, the drummer really is great. He's not putting his ego into this. He sounds like Nick Mason. You know, he's got he's got the concert toms, or the way he's doing the fills. Here's a guy that's really being, and then all of a sudden I'm like, you know, you see on the screen, I'm like, oh shit, it's Joey.
Oh,
it's Joey
wow.
Warnaker. It's Joey Warnaker who's playing with Roger Waters. And I'm like, yeah,
wow.
Of course.
Do you know his singer? Do you know Robbie Wyckoff?
Robbie
was Roger's singer who sang all the Gilmore parts for those shows.
No, yeah, but the new tour is this guy named Jonathan. Oh my God, I can't remember getting his name. He's like a producer, singer, songwriter, long hair with a beard. He's singing all the Gilmore stuff, and he's cool. It's what I like about his playing, and I like Dave Kilmister, who's, you know, doing more of the Gilmore stuff. And I related to the other guy because it's kind of like almost what I do a little, because with John, which is, you know, covering stuff, doing that other part, you know, but his tone was really good, like using fuzz pedals and using high watts and, you know, really being respectful. I mean, this is the way I would approach it if I got that call. This is sacred ground.
Oh, hell yeah, man!
If I'm gonna play with Roger Waters, I'm gonna, you know, it's gonna be an homage, because this music is so important to me that you have to play it right. The tones have to be right. You have to learn this stuff note for note. You know, you're not going to rewrite Comfortably Numb.
No,
you better not.
It's funny that, you know, I saw. Did you see Pompeii, the Gilmore movie?
No, but I've seen the Albert Hall one many, many times. I haven't seen the Pompeii one.
It was really good, but Floyd is my number one band, always has been for, you know, many, many years. And Gilmore's my guy. I saw
them in second row, 77 at the Garden.
Did you really? Fuck.
I saw them. I saw the Animals tour and Wish You Were Here and Dark Side. I mean, yeah, they're my guys.
That's awesome. Well, the thing was, it was disappointing just slightly because it wasn't Nick Mason, and it was really good, but it wasn't.
But that guy has been with him for a while now.
Yeah, he's a great drummer, Steve DeStanislaw. He's a great drummer,
right? Great drummer, you know. But the way the snare is tuned, I know what you're saying. It's like a Drum Paradise snare. It's very tuned well. And he's really good. But Guy Pratt is a great bass player. You know, Guy Pratt's been around forever with those guys. Guy Pratt, I think, played on the Division Bell, you know, when Roger left the band. So but then it's cool because you have Ray.
I know you're talking about not Ray Manzarek. Ray.
Oh my God, I can't believe
brain fart. Yeah. He's from like South America. I know
No, he's from Roxy Music. He was the guitar player in Roxy Music.
No, he's from South America, like his origins. He's from like Panama or something like that. Or
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Ray.
Phil Manzanera.
Huh? Phil Manzanera. Yeah. Ray. I'm spacing out. Phil Manzanera. Yeah. From Roxy Music. Yeah. He's fantastic.
I love his guitar playing too. So, you know, but anyway, I know what you mean. And some of the some of the lyrics are not, or, you know, his wife is writing some of the lyrics.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
And that's great. And even with her, there's some songs that are stronger than others.
Totally cool.
But there's, you know, I love On an Island. There's some great stuff on an Island. But, you know, some of the songs on this newer solo record, you know, Girl in the Yellow Dress or something.
Yeah, that was a little lackluster to, you know, whereas Waters' new record I thought was freaking amazing.
Right. And the guy that produced that record is the other guitar player that's playing live with him.
Oh, not G.E. Smith.
No. It's what's his name? I'll look it up, or we can look it up. But he's he worked on the record, and it's an awesome record.
Oh, it's
so
well worth a 20-year wait. I could tell you that much.
Yeah. So what you want, what you really want, we all know what we want. We want Gilmour to go into that camp
absolutely
and make a record, like that, and just. But it's these guys. They're so wealthy, and their lives are so dense, and families, and they make at some point they're like, I make all this on my own. Why do I need to put up with that?
I totally get
it. So it becomes economics, and I did both. I went and saw Gilmour at the Bowl, and I was sitting there with my jaw open, and his guitar tone and singing is impeccable, and he's the man.
Yeah,
he is the man for me. And then I went and saw Waters, and politically and as a show, he was incredible. And then you start to realize how incredible these people were together.
Yeah.
And how talented and how groundbreaking they were. And this goes back to what we were talking about before, which is I admire people who say, I don't care what band you're in or what kind of music you're making, but you go, this is what I'm going to do. Yeah. And this is who I am. And I don't give a shit about what anybody thinks. And I'm going to wait for them to come to me. And
they could those guys could afford to do that also.
Right. Now, and this takes us to the record company conversation, which is, let's be honest, Echoes or Metal. Sorry, I should say, you have.
That was like the first album where David Gilmour, and for me anyway, became David Gilmour.
Yes. A little bit on Saucer Full of Secrets.
Yeah.
And then Metal, you get Echoes. Yeah. And you, there was a couple other songs, but, and then
One of These Days, I think, was on Metal too.
Yeah, but really there's another one where he's playing this pretty acoustic thing. And
is Fat Old Son on there? That's really good too.
I'm not gonna look it up, but that gets you to Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
You don't just, and the drag is nowadays. You just got to fucking come out with Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah,
you don't get that artist development. You do that on your own time, but John was talking about. John would have never gotten to Slippery When Wet or New Jersey
if he was around starting today.
No, and look at Springsteen.
Yeah,
Readings from Asbury Park would have never gotten to Born to Run. Yeah. These guys would have been dropped. But people need this time. They need the time to play clubs, develop as an artist, and people don't want to do it. They want to do a couple covers on YouTube or put out some music and get a record deal.
Yeah.
But then you got to go promote that guy. You got to go market that guy. And is that guy really or gal really a star? Do they really have depth? How are they on stage? Oh, they're super awkward. Oh God, they can't really sing because it was auto-tune. What are we going to do? Oh God, there goes our write-off. And then that's their life. I mean, for me, back in whatever, I was on Star Search, and my band, won one and then lost. And at 17, I thought, my life is over.
Yeah, it's funny.
That's it.
Wow.
I lost on Star Search. I got kicked off by Ed McMahon. I'm done. And I was depressed for, a while. And then one of our drummer turns, he goes, what time's band rehearsal tomorrow? I was like, 7:30.
So it was all over.
It was like, we were on the floor like dying and like, it's the end. And then we're like, okay, we have a gig at Madam, it's the blah, blah or something, or, the Central or whatever, these clubs. And you go, okay. And you just kind of go back and you move on. And, these things that we all think are like, oh my God, how will I ever get over this?
Well, and eventually life, man.
It's just life. You just keep going. Just
outside of losing Star Search, what are some of the bigger obstacles that you've had to overcome throughout this journey, either personal, music related, or business related?
I mean, I've had some. There was a period where I was focused. I was where the partying became more important than the, than the work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I wasted time, and I let that be the crutch, and I let that be the excuse. And because I could, make excuses. Oh, I was fucked up, or sorry, I was late. I was this. It's like, I was blaming my behavior or my lack of precision as a musician on, last night or that. Now, when I was working a lot back on a lot of records back then, there was a lot of extracurriculars, I should say, to be shared and enjoyed. And it was kind of just what everybody did.
Yeah.
And so being insecure or wanting to fit in, you just kind of went along. You just were like, oh, okay, everyone's drinking, so I'll drink, or everyone's partying, so I'll party.
Yeah.
And, but at some point, when you're continuing the party long after the party's over, that's not really good. Or you need the party to start before you can go to work. That's not good. So at some point, which is cute when you're in your early 20s, you're like, oh, I was so fucked up and blah, blah, blah. But when you start getting older, that behavior isn't cute anymore.
Yeah.
And you're the joke. The joke's on you. And then the other thing is, on a sad note, is I started seeing friends of mine die. People that I came up with, they're like, oh, he died in a car crash, or he OD'd, or he did. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah. And then you realize that, that there is a sensitivity that goes along with all this, and a fragility, and these things, these chemicals or whatever it is, you can use anything as become, they become your life, and they become to the point where they'll kill you, and so for me, it was like, I had to, I used to think like, oh, the wall's so high. How do I get over that wall? And just, how can I do that? Can I just show up and be me? And, am I good enough? Am I really talented? Like, now there's no more excuses, So I think that was a big obstacle for me. It's like, okay, here I am, ta-da, womp womp, do I have anything to, I think I'm pretty good, my bullshit has gotten me in rooms, but am I good? Do I really have it? Do I really have something to say lyrically, guitar, musically, emotionally? Am I trustworthy? Do they want me on the stage with them? No,
you
they
feel
don't.
good. You feel okay with that now, though, right?
Yeah, but unfortunately, I still have the same shit in my head. I mean, we all get dirty looks on stage, and when you get that dirty look, the stink eye, we call it, it'll eat you up.
People give you dirty looks, like audience members.
Well, sometimes,
or dirty looks from like your peers, like, and you hit a clam, or okay.
Yeah, damn straight.
Yeah.
I've had Melissa give me dirty looks. I've had Rod Stewart move a mic stand over my head because I didn't move back after I played the solo, and he's letting me know that I'm in his space. And
holy shit,
over my head just to go, get out of my runway, kid. And you're like, oh, wow. And you creep back in shame back to your spot, or, and I've come in, I've made mistakes, or come in late with a chord, and John turns around as he's smiling, and he gives you that look, and I know, I've known him for 20 years. He gives you that look. He's like, I'm going to kill you, or what the fuck, dude, and you just go, and he's smiling, and you're like, oh God. And I have to keep smiling, and I have to take it in.
Yeah.
And so there's no excuses, there's not like, oh, I'm stoned, bro. It's like, no, I'm, I'm here, I'm present, and I made a mistake, and you have to shake it off and keep moving.
It's like I heard an interview many years ago with Troy Aikman, the quarterback from Dallas,
Sure.
and they asked him, what's the most important asset that a quarterback needs to have? And he said, a short memory.
Yeah.
It's for the same reason, when you're fucking throwing an interception, it's like, if you could go back, John, and give advice to younger John Shanks, assuming you'd be willing to listen, what would you have told yourself to make your life easier?
I probably would have said that to trust my voice more, the inner voice. Trust don't be afraid to go for it, in the sense that, well, I'm not a good singer, or I don't know if I can do that. And I would have, forgive yourself and just walk through the fear and just have more confidence in your passion. Have more confidence in your dreams. Don't let anyone tell you. Don't let anyone pull you off course. Don't be distracted by, whatever, drugs and alcohol. Don't be distracted too much by other things that can get in the way. And so, yeah.
Were your folks both supportive of you, your mom and your dad?
Yeah, they were both supportive. I mean, they both were, wanted to make sure I had a job and that I was educated. And there was definitely a period they were worried about me. And there was, at some point, they were like, listen, okay, you had your time. You tried. Good, valiant effort. Now let's get a real job. And I was kind of like, no, I'm not your problem anymore. If I fall on my face, it's my fault. I'm going to pick myself up. And so the one thing I'm, and I love my parents, but what I'm really proud of is that, not that they did support me, and they bought me gear and they helped me in my dream. But at one point they were, when I became successful was when I finally was doing everything on my own. When I everything that I own, I bought.
Yeah.
Or everything that I've accolades or songs or records I've made or things that it's like, I borrowed stuff from friends, like, just because I want to hear something, but I created this for better or worse.
Right. Which is fucking wonderful, man, because I'm the same way, man. No one's done anything for me. It's just a good feel for me anyway. Right. I really like that.
And you know what? And sometimes it's really lonely, and it's really hard, and it's really, I deal with a lot of kind of depression and kind of self-loathing, in the sense that, like, can I still do this? Do I have anything to say? Do I know what I'm doing? You got every kid with a laptop now that it's a whiz, and they're incredibly talented, and you want to go, that's not fair. They had the internet, they have a studio on their laptop. I was driving to Radio Shack to get a cable to plug one thing in but then you sound like Mr. Wilson.
You sound like Get Off the Grass.
Yeah.
You horrible kids. Yeah.
Get off my land, it's like, so the thing is, you have to stay open and current and humble and hungry. And I got to do a thing with Herbie Hancock a few years ago when I got to campaign for Obama, and I was doing the campaign song for free, but who cares? But it was all these amazing musicians, and I was going here and recording this person and getting this person to sing on it, and this person, and procuring files. And one of the things was, I was in New York, and they were like, listen, you got to go record Herbie Hancock at this piano store on 58th Street. There's a little Pro Tools rig. And I'm like, oh, really? I was going, okay. Oh, shit. Okay. Herbie Hancock. And so I got to spend the evening with Herbie Hancock, just talking to him and recording him and hanging out with him. And I think he's 80
Is he that old?
I think he's, I think
Wow.
he's,
So he must have been a lot older than I thought when he was kicking it.
I don't know. We got to look it up, but I think he's an older gentleman. And my point is, I mean, if you just look at one aspect of his career, it's daunting.
Yeah.
But then you think of all, the Miles stuff, and then all the solo records, those great funk records, and Man-Child and Water, just all those great bands, and continued, and so I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I'm going on a solo tour, and he's got he was talking to me about how he's got 3 iPads, and they're all hooked up, and the loops are on this and the thing, and you're just sitting there in awe that he still has the curiosity, and he still has he's like following his bliss.
Yeah.
He's following his bliss, and he's a Buddhist. That's an amazing thing about him. I mean, so when you talk to him, you can feel it. And he's like, here's a guy that makes no apologies for having that childlike quality and truly following his bliss. And I'm like, man, if I could, I have to remember that, that we're so lucky we get to do any aspect of this, like we were writing the song last night, and the other songwriter, we were trying to write the second verse, and he looks at me, he goes, can you believe we do this for a living? And I went,
that's so cool. That's really cool, man.
You believe that this is our job? Oh, can you believe this is our job? And I went, I know, it's incredible.
That's awesome, man.
And he and I know each other, but we've never written a lot together. But it was going well, and it was kind of, the energy was cool, and we were writing, I think, a good song, and what he said, I was like, yeah, and I had a lot of gratitude, and even where the song is now, like, we haven't really presented the song, and songs are so great when they're still in the room. Do you know what I mean? When they're still, it's just us, and we're still excited about it. And it's not about where it is on the chart. It's not about where it's going to go. And it's about, we're taking this piece of clay and we're molding it into a song, and it's fun. It's just kind of fun, and you're exploring, and that's the gift of music. That's the gift of being able to sit here and talk to you and talk about guitars. And we haven't really, but it's all connected.
Yeah.
Because the same energy I put into the song is the same obsession I have on, is it an Alnico 5 Magnet in there, or is it an Alnico 2? Is it what tubes are those Telefunkins, or are those, so I mean, it's like, why does certain AC30 sound better? Because transformers are better from that company than the other company. How do I know? Because you finally get to hear a great one, and you open it up and you go, oh my God, that's those transformers, not the other ones. I like the sound of that, because when you put the MD409 Sennheiser in front of that mic, and it's going through this mic pre, that AC30 sounds better than that one. That's one's a little harsh. And why? What is the difference? Well, I don't want to, say the names, but like, that transformer is harsher than that transformer.
Right.
And it's the choke too. It's like the combination of all those things. Now, that's going down the rabbit hole, but I adjust the heights on my pickups because sometimes it's too bassy on the lower side. Yeah, everyone does it. There's the Billy Gibbons thing where the screws on the PAFs, that you turn them a certain way, because it's I've also done this where I'm in a studio and I'm adjusting the heights on a pickup, and I'm hitting a chord, and there's a weird overtone. It's going, and you kind of start adjusting the height, and it starts going, and it almost, the overtones start tuning themselves. And now I've never even ever talked about this, but it's like, to me, you go, so you're almost tuning the pickup with the overtones, and you're like, oh, there it is. That sounds really good right there. Now, I could be dreaming, but maybe it's just the way the overtones were sustaining and eventually fading out, or it could be that they're kind of the waves are tuning themselves in an overtone and so the height actually does come into play, and those things do count.
That's totally,
you know what I mean?
Let's like Eric Johnson has this thing. Do you know who Red Volkart is?
Sure.
So Red told me he had to sell a bunch of guitars one time, and Eric wound up buying one of his guitars. So they were talking geek shit, and Eric labels his chords because he has found, depending upon which way you plug the cord in, has a radical difference on the sound.
Yes, that's true.
And so he's like really religious about that. And, you know, if you tell
How about this one? Eric Johnson, here's a little known trick. Eric Johnson uses a washer, a little silver washer that he puts at the end of his guitar cable. So when he plugs it in, it makes a harder contact.
Oh, shit. I'm writing that down. That's interesting.
And that makes a difference. And I was like, yeah, right. And then I tried it with a friend of mine who was showing me this, and I was like, oh my God, you're right. I've heard that with speaker cables too, like the direction of speaker cables, you know, the way you plug them in.
Yeah.
I've heard it. How about this one? Direction of fuses within an amp.
No.
Yes.
Wow.
Talk to Eric Johnson about that. The direction, Dave Friedman and I have talked about this. The direction of the fuse, there's a difference.
Holy crap. That's wild,
I know.
man. All righty. Tough question. What do you like most about yourself?
What do I like most about myself? Jeez. I think I have compassion. I think I have a lot of compassion. I think I have a lot of empathy. What do I like? I think I have a childlike curiosity for things. What do I like, though? I like that things turn me on, and I want to explore them, and I want to nurture that exploration of something and really understand why and how that works. Now, whether I'm left with a degree in that or I don't know. Sometimes I just touch on things and then I lose interest, or I work on something or explore something, and the problem is, it's money. It's just, if you like, God, I would love to be able to do. It's time and money. I wish. Man. So what I like about myself is, I don't know. I'm still learning, honestly. I mean, I've been through a lot. So it's like the person that gets in my way is me a lot of the time, I think depression's been in my family for, everyone in my family is on or was on medication, and except for me.
Right.
So therefore I'm not a morning person. It takes me a while to get going. I have to get out of my head. I have to go through like this little, just, ease into the day and get through that. So it's like I struggle with, it's weird. I think I have this thing of like, if you celebrate something too much, your ego is too big. So I try to, once in a while, like someone will be sitting there and I'm listening and people are like, and I did this and I'm this. And I'm like, yeah, I know that feeling. Or I get that. I've done that. And they're like, oh yeah, really? And you gotta, every once I'm dumb. I jump into I compete, and I shouldn't, but, cause it's a one-way street. And, so what do I like about myself? I don't know. I think at times I'm funny. I think at times I have a way to, I'm a survivor, I guess. But I don't know. I'm still learning.
Yeah, sometimes that's a work in progress. It's a tough question.
It is a tough question, because there are moments where I'm like, that's pretty good. I'm okay. yesterday was, that was a good day, but I'm human, I make a lot of mistakes. I wish I was a better person at times, and I try to be a pretty good person, but I have foibles, and I am I'm on the path. I'm trying to figure it out. So,
one day at a time, man. It's a fucking long journey, right?
Yeah, one day at a time. Exactly.
So here's a relevant question: when you're having a bad day, what do you do to make yourself feel better?
I've used I've used retail therapy. Sometimes that's like going for a walk. Sometimes that's going for a hike. Sometimes that's buying a pair of sunglasses. Sometimes that's buying a guitar pedal. Sometimes that's
I like that retail therapy.
I'm weird. It's like I haven't had that thing. It's like, oh my God, I'm just so excited. Like yay. That even I don't want to say I'm jaded, but it's it's like, oh, the album went #1. Oh, that's fucking awesome. That's great. That's so exciting, but it's, I don't know. It's not, I don't want to say it's not as exciting as it used to be, but it's always exciting, but it doesn't define me.
I think that's a smart thing though, man.
Yeah. I mean, there's the saying is, music is something I do. It's not who I am, or work is what I do. It's not who I am. But I think I try to say that and then slowly believe it, because I do put a lot of my self-worth in what I do. I do put it is kind of who I am at times, but I'm also, I'm always struggling with this kind of, and it's this low. I have this kind of always this like, oh, the glass is half empty, and I have to really fight to stay in the joy, and I have to stay in the bliss and stay in the gratitude, and when I sit there, I'm good, things don't bother me as much, because I'm very lucky. I'm very blessed, and so. And sometimes I say that just to kind of hear myself say it, to believe it, because I definitely come from a family where nothing is good enough, and so.
What's your dad do?
My dad was in TV. He was an executive producer of the Merv Griffin Show, and Jack Parr, he was vice president of ABC and created Good Morning America in 2020 and Nightline, and so pretty driven, pretty successful. But it's interesting what you learn from your family or your parents or my dad. What I learn is the things that I don't want to do. I don't like. I see where he acquiesced at times his dreams in order to be a company man or keep going. And sometimes you have to be an asshole. Sometimes you have to like really fight for your quest. And I think sometimes, I without him talking, I see his disappointments in himself, and therefore I try to use that as a springboard to say, like, not to be selfish, but sometimes to be slightly of that. It's like, I'm going to do this for the common good of my kids, or I'm going to do this for the common good of me, that I need to fight for me. And because nobody's, like we were talking about before, no one's going to believe in me more than me.
Yeah.
I've waited for the manager to kind of do this, or I've waited for the certain people to do that. And, but I got to make those phone calls. I gotta, and I'm tired. I don't want to, I don't want to be told no, so, but sometimes you just got to do it. And sometimes that means pulling back in order to get re-energized to want to do it. This is an interesting summer because I'm working most of this summer because I've been away, and so I'm trying to make sure that this side of my life is functioning, and so I'm writing and I'm doing records and and working on stuff in order to kind of at times maybe get back in some of the rooms that I'm not cool enough to be in anymore. So I'm planting seeds. I'm working on my craft, and I live in LA, so it's like I go in my backyard. It's a vacation. I can go swim in my backyard. I can go hike in the mountains. I can go to great restaurants here. You can enjoy your life without having to say that I went to the south of France and had an awesome summer. I mean, I've done that. I'm lucky. I've done that. So I don't feel like I'm not miserable that I'm not somewhere else. I'm actually content, which is a good place to be in.
Well, the problem is when you're an entrepreneur, you've got to prime the pump all the time.
Yeah.
And if you fucking think you're at a position, well, I don't have to prime the pump. If you do that and then the pump dries, you're so fucked, But
I'm okay priming the pump right now.
Yeah, you have to.
Okay. It's like I kind of enjoy tinkering, and I enjoy reading, and I enjoy working on songs. It never ends. It's like, it happens every time I write a song. It's like I go into a room, I'm nervous, I'm uncomfortable, I feel slightly like, bleh. And then it starts to happen, and then it gets better, and then you get to record it, and you make a record, and you get excited about it, and believe it or not, it's like I'm working on a song. There's no guitars on it right now.
Wow.
I mean, none. It's all I sit here.
All loops.
I'm sitting here programming synths, and then eventually, I'll do. Where is this? Yeah, I mean, I'm here. Look, I'll show you. It's like I'm literally. So it's all this shit. So I'm like doing that.
At least you practice what you preach, man. When you're talking about writing songs, you do the same formula for yourself. Sounds like metal.
So yeah, but I'm working for an artist, and she was like, "I need this kind of song." I'm like, "Let's write it."
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting here. She's like, "I want it to sound like this. I want it to be like that. I want a little of this. I want a little of that." Which is, yeah. So I go off like a freaking tailor.
No, you got my real gig is I run a marketing company. I've been doing this 20 years, and I have this saying, having an abundance of leads solves almost any business problem you'll ever have. Honestly, man, I'd rather have too much business that you could sit and say no to, or not now or later or whatever, than not enough. I mean, because I've been in both situations, and the one where you have too much is a lot more safer, comfortable place to be, man. For me, anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, I hear you. What other questions you got?
Most important person in your life?
Oh. God, that's a tough one, because I'm blessed to be surrounded by a lot of really amazing people. You could say your family. You could say, my dad is 86, and he's fragile right now, and I've done a lot of work on my dad, and my dad's an important person to me, and I lost my mom 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
That sucks. Sorry,
and it's so that this is gonna be a big one for me, and he's stubborn, and so I think what happens is the things that you don't get in your family, you look for in other places and in other people. So whether that's, healthy, strong male friendship, or trying to find some sense of it all, like not blaming myself, so I don't know who, when I say the most important person, there's aspects and things that I get from different men, friends of mine, men and women, that I get, that to me lets me know that I'm not crazy, or lets me know I'm okay, and that I'm valid. So.
What's the most important thing he taught you, your dad, if anything, or taught you not to do?
I mean, one of the things I remember my dad telling me that you can be nice and be successful. That was early on. He told me that. I must have been 12 or something. And he said to me, treat the assistant as well as you do the boss, because one day they'll be the boss.
Yeah.
So like treat everybody the same. There's that great picture of Obama like shaking hands with the janitor in the White House, or fist bumping. It's a great picture, and it's just that you try to give everybody the same respect, regardless. Because I've met fucking assholes who were billionaires, and I've met assholes who were broke. And then I've met others, where the one is the flip of that.
Yeah.
So it's not about the money, it's about the integrity. Just for me.
No, I agree with you, man.
I've had some of the best conversations with London taxi cab drivers, So because they're worldly, they've been driving cabs. They know they're very street smart, So anyway.
What are you proudest of, musically and personally?
Musically, I mean, you could say accolades. Listen, I'm proud. I won a producer of the year. That was really hard. I worked my ass off to win that. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that. I'm proud that songs that I'm proud when people come up to me and they go, your guitar playing has really been an influence on me, and the way you arrange guitar parts and songs, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud that when I see, I'll give you an example. I was standing on a corner in Hollywood somewhere. I'm standing ready to cross a light. I was parked my car and I'm going to meet someone for lunch. And I'm standing at the corner and this girl pulls up in a car, convertible. And one of my songs is blaring.
That's so cool.
And she's singing the song full voice. It was actually Breathe, Michelle Branch.
Huh.
And she's like, if I just breathe, and she's screaming it. And you're just like, wow, that's crazy. So like moments like that where it's not about the check, and it's like where it's actually made an impact on somebody, or you, like when you're talking about Take That and the song Patience, I got to stand on at Wembley Stadium on stage with Take That and watch 100,000 people sing Patience.
Wow.
I was playing acoustic guitar because, Gary Barlow and the guys, and you go like, you want to play Patience with us? You got to see what we see.
That's so cool.
And just sit in on that one song, you just got to see it, because the whole place, it's such an anthem over there. And I mean, literally, when I go to England and I'm there for work, and the guys, the passport control, they go, what do you do? And I go, songwriter, record producer. Really? Who are you here with? I'm like, oh, and I name the artist. And really, who have you worked with? And I just go, I wrote Patience. And they go, what? You wrote Patience? I just go, chunk.
That's awesome.
It's like the get in England free card.
Get in England free. Is that the biggest crowd you've been in front of, 100,000 people, or is John?
No,
John's
biggest
probably had bigger ones.
Yeah, we played in Rock in Rio in September. That was about 140,000.
Wow.
And I played with Melissa Etheridge at Woodstock in, what was it, 95, 4, and that was 500,000.
Really?
That was the biggest crowd I've ever played for.
Upstate New York.
Yeah, it was insane.
Wow.
You could literally not see the end.
How do you run music stuff there? Does it even matter?
I don't know how it all works. All I know is I was playing through a matchless DC-30, a Fender Blackface Deluxe that was going into a 4x12 and a bunch of pedals, and all you think is like, I'm not loud enough.
Is that even possible to be loud enough, though?
It's not. It's not. And the thing is, we were right after Henry Rollins, so it was like this punk thing, and then we came out, and we went over well, and it was a trip. And then, so what am I proud? I can sit here and talk about my life and personal notes, but that's private.
Yeah.
I'm extremely proud of, my kids, and I mean, my boys are the best, and I'm proud that I try to figure life out, and I'm not, I'm not using chemicals, and I try to be a good guy. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't have the answers, but I'm proud of a lot. But that's kind of personal, private stuff. That it's like there's a saying. It's like I try to live my life by a quiet tenacity. Let's put it that way.
Do you have any hobbies or interests outside of music, John?
None. No. I love tennis. I grew up in New York, so it was always Forest Hills for me. And I love tennis because I love watching these guys and the tour and the discipline and the agility and the drive of tennis. I've been watching the World Cup. I really like that too. Hobbies. I love art. I'm obsessed with art. I collect art. I love watches. I love, cars and stuff like that. But, I love anything I love actors and comedians, and I love the arts. I love museums and books and movies and, So I guess that's my passion, or my hobby is just, anything that's great, food, great books, great movies, great art. I'm into anything like that. I'm down.
Awesome. Last question then. What's been the biggest change in your personality, John, over the last 10 years? And how much of this change has been deliberate and intentional, or how much was it related to just a part of aging?
I've had people say to me, like, "You're nice. I'm nicer now than I was." And I'm always like, really? I always thought I was nice. And they're like, no, you could be a dick.
That's the kind of people you want around you, actually, though.
I know. I think I try to be nicer now. I think I try to let stuff roll off my back faster. The problem is I'm super hard on myself. So when I'm super hard on myself, sometimes that comes across where I'm super hard on other people.
Sure, I get that.
So it comes across a certain way where I'm actually beating myself up twice as hard. But sometimes people are like, that's still not an excuse to act a certain way or a certain behavior. So I try to, I'm trying to be better at that. I just try to, accept my shortcomings is really what it's about. Like, we were talking about before that, I'm not the fastest guy. I'm not the best reader. I'm not the best writer. But this is what I love. And I work really hard at doing it because I enjoy it. I really like it. I think part of the reason I started touring again when John asked me to was that I think I needed to do it. I needed to be a part of something, nothing against my life. I needed some of that male camaraderie and I needed to be in a band situation with a bunch of men and or you call each other on your shit and it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
It's just like, you're too loud, shut up, or you're rushing or you missed that or, hey, how about that crowd? I just needed to hang out a little bit, because everything has been about my career and drive and accomplishments where it's nice to be a part of something that's bigger than myself and contribute to that effort and stand next to someone who is my friend and look around the stage and realize all these guys are, I really care about all of the guys in the band, everyone. I care about a lot of the guys in the crew but John and I are extremely close. He's like a brother to me. And I kind of feel that way about all the other guys now, where it's just, we get to enjoy this time in our lives and experience it because we're not kids, we're all men. And so, that we get to do this and play in front of stadiums or arenas is fucking awesome. You know, it's just incredible. And yeah, but it's work we're traveling nicely. We're in a plane.
Yeah, you're not in a van.
No, it's well, you know, we have it well. You know, we're staying in great hotels.
Yeah,
and everybody's cool, and the crew is great, and we just try to get better. We try to be a better band all the time. We're always, you know, Phil and I are always obsessing about our tones and sounds and pedals and parts, and because we want it to be great. And so when and it's not just me, and John wants it too, and Tico and Dave Bryan and Everett and Hugh McDonald, you know, everyone wants it to be great. You know, they can say like, oh, well, whatever, you know, but they do, because they're super consistent, and they give their heart and soul to this. And, you know, it's just learning to balance it all, because they've been through so much that you know, touring's easy, you know, living is hard.
yeah. And I always say life is not for the weak.
No, I mean, it's you know, it's just me keeping a positive attitude, forgiving myself, and trying to have fun. And I kind of was always in a situation where you're not allowed to have too much fun. You know, you can't have too much fun. You know, that means you're not serious if you're having too much fun. You know, you're not taking this serious if you're just being a goofball. But now it's like, you know, I'm actually having fun, and I enjoy it. But I still battle my demons, but you try to keep them in check and forgive yourself.
I bet keep you going. Are enjoying not having to be running the show also.
Yeah. I mean, I like being a part of the band and just, you know, playing that part of that song or singing that harmony in that song. And it is fun, and you get to play rock star, and the 14-year-old kid in me is having a blast. It's awesome. And you know, when I'm on the road, I am 24/7 obsessing on amp tones and pedals and guitars. You know, I'm on the quest. You know, I'm on that safari, the tone safari. And,
tone safari.
You know, it is. It's just
like
this. And I love it. You know, and when and I need that to immerse myself 110% into that. Because when I'm here, you know, it's like I'm working on this song, and you know, I mean, I'm sitting here. I mean,
you're on the tone safari for everybody else when you're there.
This is what I'm looking at.
Very cool, man. Wow, what a guitar rack.
And this is just upstairs. I mean, here, and there's a rack, there's a pedal board, and this is in the writing room. You know, a Dumble amp, a Marshall that's been modded like Slash's old JTM 45.
Orange.
Yeah, and then this is literally, I'm at my studio. I'm not even at my house. These are all.
Oh my God! Wow, that reminds me of you know, that line in the wall. Are all these your guitars?
Yeah, and then here, you know, and then I'll give you a little quick tour. All acoustics.
Wow, I think they're alphabetized. This is the neatest and organized racks I've ever seen.
Drum kit. Piano.
What's your favorite guitar of all the guitars you have? I know it's like picking out your favorite kid, but what's the one that makes you just like you're bonded best with?
I don't know. I can't answer that.
My God!
There's a 252 Telly.
Yeah.
53 Les Pauls, 56 Strats, 61 SGs, Pelham Blue SGs.
You got some 335s that look like in there?
Yeah, 335s.
Wow, this is literally like a few walls at Guitar Center. I mean, I've never seen anything like this.
Like old keyboards. I love old synths and stuff. And then this control room. Hello, Paul.
Wow. Hey, man. That's so wild.
Pedal boards. And then rack.
Wow, that's just amazing.
60, there you go. 61, 335, 68 Les Paul Custom, 59 Telly. So they're those probably guitars we use a lot.
Wow.
Those are kind of the big three a lot. But then we're always grabbing other shit.
How could you not? That's like being in being a single guy in a room with 100 naked women or something like that. It's like, oh my God, how do you pick and choose? Wow.
You can't. I mean, it's like even in here, it's like amps everywhere, guitars. Yeah, look at that.
Wow. Oh, that's a nice old Fender. What is that?
59 twin, 52. Sorry, not twin. I didn't show you the other room where all the amps are. It's crazy. It's like 2 59 twins, 6 AC30s. It's just
Does
endless.
each one have a different function with those 6 AC30s?
Well, there's 2 that are like the main ones, and the others I use occasionally for certain things. So it's like there's kind of 2 that have always. There's one that's I've had for 26 years.
Oh wow!
So yeah. So there you go.
Well, man, I really appreciate all your time, man. You're a real sweet guy, and I know you're hard on yourself. You're probably a lot better than you give yourself credit for. And is there anything you want to promote, man? You want to talk about anything you got?
I'm working on Melissa Etheridge's record right now. We're in the middle of that. I'm doing a few songs for. There's a couple of things I just can't really. I'd love to talk about.
Sure.
It's just, kind of some younger artists and that are cool, but also you don't want to jinx some of it. And then I'm actually, what's crazy, I'm doing a couple of things for Barbara Streisand right now, which is wild. Yeah. And I spent time with her the other day. She's incredible. And,
did you call her Barbara or Babs?
I want to get to the point where I call her Babs.
You need to, man. And
you gotta earn it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
But still, I just kind of say nice to like it was a pleasure to meet you, Miss Streisand, and then I think I said it's nice to see you, Barbara, and, But the other night last night we were talking on the phone, and I was just I wanted to call her Babs, but
you got to have big balls early on like that to be dropping the Babs.
When the songs are finished and we get to a certain place, and or if she's giving me shit about something, I'll go, listen, Babs.
Yeah, that's it.
That's when you play the card. But you have to earn the Babs card.
Yeah, it's tough too because there's an age discrepancy there too. So there's some of that respect of elders, and she's quite a bit older than us, I would imagine. No.
Yeah, she's amazing though.
Yeah.
She looks great. She's sharp as a tack.
Yeah.
Funny and brilliant, and super. Just she's an icon. She's incredible. I really respect and admire her a lot.
Well, that's awesome, man. I know you'll do good things for her too, man.
Yes. So far, we're doing a vocal on Friday, so on one song. So
there you go. And if she fucks with you, you pull out the Babs. That's the right time to do it, bro. Hey, listen, man. It's really been a pleasure talking to you. You have some great stories, some great experience. You've done a hell of a lot, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share some.
My pleasure. Man. Good luck editing all this.
John, thanks for everything, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for your time. I appreciate you being patient with me on this.
No, are you kidding? Cool. Everybody, thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Thanks again to John Shanks for spending time with us. Check him out online and support all his artists, and go see him on tour with Bon Jovi. He's playing acoustic guitar, and tell him you love him.
Follow me on Instagram.
What's your Instagram?
John_Shanks.
And he's a sensitive flower, so be nice.
Yeah, I'm a sensitive fucking flower.
Hey, hang on. I'll wrap up with you. Make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get our newsletter list right now. Thanks again to John Shanks. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time.
Tune up.
Tune in, and drop out. Peace and love. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.